Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another entertaining evening of intense racing action in the one and only series we all know and love. It is of course the UKSimRacing Community Sunday GT3 Championship Season 17 as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and proudly hosted by none other than SimRacing International. Last time out in VIR we had mixed conditions, and with those mixed conditions it was all about the gamble of the slicks versus the wets. But here today we have made our way all the way to Australia for round number 7 of 10, and it's much more static skies by comparison. The sun is out, we're towards the end of summer in Australia, and we are here at Mount Panorama Raceway. Arguably, one of the hardest circuits to do well at, whether it be on a lap by yourself or on a grid packed full of cars, this circuit is an old school circuit when it comes to its layout. 3.86 miles in length, or 6.21 kilometres depending on your preference of units. What never changes, however, is the corners and the threat that the walls around present, because this is a street circuit. Looking around it, you may not think it's a street circuit with the amount of green and also the amount of gravel, but trust us when we say that not too far away from the raceway's tarmac are plenty of businesses and homes, and by day these are public roads used by commuters to make their way to work and make their way to friends and family. But on race day, however, this 3.86 mile circuit turns into argue one of the toughest out there, and with most of the corners located over a very narrow mountain pass, this is one of those circuits where track position is absolutely key unless you're willing to brave it all and risk it all over the mountain, or alternatively prove yourself to be the master of the drag strip in the run up to or down from the mountain. But who exactly out our drivers today will be the king of Mount Panorama? Well, that's what we're here to find out as we get ready to go racing. Now, we welcome you all to this post-round broadcast from circuit side, of course. This broadcast not being live, but being premiered on the SimRacing International YouTube channel. And if you want to catch all the racing action on a weekly basis at SimRacing International, all you got to do is go to youtube.com, search for us there, and once you've done so, we'll definitely make sure you subscribe so that way you can stay up to date with all that action. But in terms of the action you're seeing here, it occurred as of Sunday, the 22nd of February, 2026. We're ready to use if it were live today in this post-round broadcast on Monday the 23rd. That means we do not know what happens, whether it be in the qualifying session that's currently ongoing or the upcoming one and only race as always in our schedule, and that's why it's going to be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in. And one of the content if you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action over the entirety of the season, including what we come into today. And without further ado, as we welcome you to this broadcast, let's bring you up to speed with what's happened in the last 6 rounds, particularly last time out at VIR. And my goodness, there were so many stories there, and we're going to have trouble trying to fill you in. So as we take a look back in time then, last time out on the 15th of February, we were at the Virginia International Raceway, or VIR as it's abbreviated to. And there, mixed conditions were the big theme, and throughout the practice session and in qualifying and in the race, the rain came, it went away, and it would come back. What it meant was the grid was completely shuffled. Several drivers struggled in qualifying, but there were a few who did not. We had pole position go the way not of an elite driver, but to a pro driver in the form of Maxime Philippard, who in the end, whilst he may have put it on pole by a staggering margin both overall and in the class, particularly in pro, taking pole position by 1.8 seconds over Nathan Anstis when they did go green flag race, and where it all went wrong for Maxime Philippard later in the race, where the transitional periods from the wet to the dry and the dry to the wet caught him out, with his gamble on slicks in the end not paying off by comparison with others. The same can be said for Eduardo Royes in the pro class as well, who having started a bit further back, roared his way through the field on slick tyres, only for it to go backwards at midway through the race. But meanwhile, others who started on the slick tyre there made it work out magically. We of course did see a brilliant gamble from none other than Pietro Antonio Pasquarello. However, it all came down to a last lap battle between himself and the wet shot running machine of William Arneson, and sadly contact down the back straight saw none other than Pasquarello's car go into the barrier, and Arneson was able to come home with the victory. And I think the jury is still out on that with regards to whether it's a racing incident or whether there's going to be a penalty for a driver or not. But still, that's in the past, and the stewards are working hard on that. But in the meantime, if it didn't go quite right for none other than Philippard in the pro class, who exactly did take victory in the pro class? Well, it was none other than Nathan Anstis, who brought home his first win of the season after 2 second places back-to-back, but he kept us guessing all the way to the end, and we miscalled it last time out by saying that he'd gambled by waiting until the final lap to come into the pits. In fact, he had come into the pits midway through the race, and he picked up a drive-through penalty for instant points, and whilst Kyle Roy was pushing hard, he wasn't quite able to overcome the fact that Nathan Anstis in the end had bought himself enough of a gap lap early on in the race, but he was able to come out ahead just ahead of Roy, who needed another lap in order to be able to try and steal the win away from Anstis. And well, it was an absolutely huge day for the UK SimRacing driver, who then has finally taken that first win, and we'll show you how much confidence it's given him in the championship standings very shortly. As for the interclass, meanwhile, will Craig Hewlett return to the top for his second win of the season, following up from what has been a dismal run of form recently, and indeed making it a second win after the first win of the season coming all the way back at the season opener. But it's coincidental, of course, to say that he kicked off the first half of the season with a win, and he's kicked off the second half of the season with a win. Well, is it a coincidence, or is it a sign for things to come? Your guess is as good as mine, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you one thing as well. What he also got to was an incredible pole lap from him to take pole position in the class by 1.5 seconds over Tom Wheeler, and also he was third overall. So Craig Hewlett definitely making the gamble work on the slick tyre, as did some other drivers, but it didn't work out for everybody, and those who started in the wets played it safe, and they also made sure to secure some valuable points when they weren't falling to the grass. And today, of course, is round number 7. We are here at the Bathurst forecourse. And as I try to get ready to go race in Australia, there's no sign of rain on the horizon. It's sunny skies with a bit of cloud, and it's also warm track temperatures. And this is going to be a circuit everyone's very familiar with, of course, because we are racing on the weekend of the iRacing official 12 Hours of Bathurst as well, in commemoration of the real-life endurance event which happened the weekend before. And therefore, our drivers could say they've all been Bathursted out by the end of this one. And whoever is still Bathursty for racing action, well, I'll tell you one thing, you can never get too much of the mountain. But after this round, next time out, we will be in Germany on the 1st of March, the Nürburgring Grosser Preisstrecke, or the GP circuit, and all our drivers will be there to mix conditions once again, potentially. But if that's the recap of who exactly won last time out and the summary story of Bathurst, then how exactly did the standings stand then after 6 rounds of racing? And here we go into the elite class first and foremost, and what we can see in the Elite Drivers' Championship top 12 is that Andrea Miato leads the way on 450 points, with lead cut to 18 by William Arneson with that provisional win. However, the key point being the Tartan ResTech driver opted to play it safe and make sure he finished third rather than chasing down first place. And whilst it's perhaps not the most ideal result, on paper at least, when you go into the detail, what you suddenly realise is that by taking the approach, which is some points is better than none, and being on the podium is the most valuable part of the story, well, there you get to see the fact that he does have 5 podiums in 6 races, the only other result being a non-finish, which becomes his drop score. Well, Andrea Miato right now definitely has a very strong championship campaign underneath him. But from the Italian to the Norwegian of William Arneson, a third win now, and on 432 points, he's moving forward, and well, the fortunes for him definitely contradictory to the fortunes of his teammate at Beta Frost, none other than Henrik Riestrand, having a non-finish in the end after the car went round him on the run through the snake and up towards South Bend at VIR. And well, huge instance for him and several other drivers in the elite class, and it all fell apart. And therefore, he needs a big bounce back today, because despite qualifying second place in the class, the fact that he's not finished, well, he's lost some major points and right now is at risk of being hauled in by the rest of the field. And in fact, that risk is almost surmounted there with the fact it's only 2 points to Reece Saunders sitting in 4th place, and the Altitude 3M esports driver, despite not perhaps being on the pace in previous rounds and not returned to the podium as of yet, well, last time out he wasn't on the grid, opting to miss the round and therefore consigning VIR as a drop score. And while I think in retrospect grateful for that one, given the fact it could have been an absolute nightmare round, it could have been a major opportunity, we'll never know. But what we do know is he's back here today ready to go for gold. Pietro Antonio Pasquarello meanwhile sits in 5th place there, and what we could see for the Tartan ResTech driver is that 2nd place not what he wanted. And intriguingly, normally it's been Andrea Miato who's been the fastest of the Tartan ResTech drivers. Miato was the slowest of the trio in the elite class last time out on average, and meanwhile Pasquarello was the fastest by comparison. And well, that 2nd place definitely going into what is his books. However, I think he definitely wanted the win. He's moved to 314 points. Can he continue to close the gap to the top 4 today? Because if not, Max Wheeler will be there to follow him, and the BMW M4 Evo driver making that switch to the BMW for the purposes of Monza. Well, it paid off there, and well, last time out it also paid off with a 5th place finish, so some good points continue to come the way of the freewheeler racing by Phoenix driver. Richard Simnor, things continue to go around and down for him, the defending champion for DCW Racing, and this definitely has been a title defence that has not got off to the best start, and well, VIR proved once again it's just not working out for him, but hopefully he'll see better today. With Harvey Wheeler sitting in 8th place there, and what a non-finish last time out, and what a struggle it was for Harvey Wheeler in the end, and the freewheeler racing by Phoenix driver now only 6 points ahead of Salvatore Ferrandino, with the Tartan ResTech driver enjoying a good run of form at VIR, and well, definitely was very quick in qualifying, but over the race, race, seemed to struggle a little bit with adjusting to the wet tyre compound, particularly in the transitional periods where he went from wet to dry, and that held him back to a degree in his Lamborghini. But he's ahead of Jakub Stofko, who's only at 4 points behind the Canadian driver there for Mirko Group M Esports. And then we do have a further 26 points to Casper Brotner for Old Dudes and Calves Amnesia, and the Danish driver of a non-finish. It was also non-finish for Hayden Miller, who's dropped to 12, and it definitely has not been a season to shout about so far for Hayden Miller, with 3 non-finishes in 6 races, although he did have that win, of course, in round number 3. But coming to the pro class, meanwhile, the story here is a little bit more grandiose in the fact that we have a huge gap between Carl Roy and Nathan Anstis. And when we say huge, it's 52 points. Doesn't sound big on paper, but when you do consider that Carl Roy has had 5 podium finishes in 6 rounds, 3 wins in those, and the lowest finish he's had was not on the podium, it was an 8th place finish. Well, understandably right now, the Corvette driver for Group M Esports is looking very good in the Miracle Machine, head of Nathan Anstis, who after his first win of the season, 2 second places, well, you've got to imagine the UKSimRacing Manish driver, this is his time now really trying to put a dent into the championship lead of Roy. But Carl Roy, understand we haven't played it as safe as he possibly could at VIR, despite a couple of major offs. Well, right now he's probably going to have to take the restrictors off today and go all in. However, they may be your headliner drivers. Keep your eyes on Mr. Third Place, Sean Connor there, because he finished third place last time out at the VIR circuit, and he has been third place in the championship for the last 4 rounds. The Connor Bros racing driver in his McLaren, a trusty steed, and I'll tell you one thing about Sean Connor, last time out, things had worked out a little bit differently for him. I definitely think he could have finished on the podium in 2nd place instead of 3rd, perhaps even snuck in the win. However, we'll have to wait and see whether he can take his first win today. Ross Young sits in 4th place for Dexterous Motorsport Zemex, and with a 5th place finish last time out, continues to build his campaign. He has started to try and break away from the Axis SimSport machinery of Matthew Croft, who finished in 10th, and in it was not a day to really remember for the British driver. However, he continues to charge forward and is still trying to recreate his efforts from round number 2 with that infamous win, and he is ahead of Darren Sharples, who taking 9th, well, right now just ahead of Croft at the finish line at VIR, and just behind him in terms of the points there by the best part of 32. We then do have Steve Hobbs, only a further 2 points behind there, the Sim Coach driver enjoying his best performance of the season last time out, taking a 4th place finish in his Ferrari, ahead of Rob Windsor by 50 points, and the UKSimRacing Manish driver right now still trying to find some form that he did have earlier on in the season. However, he hasn't been able to quite recreate what he was able to achieve in round number 2, and he's in the shadow to a degree of his teammate Nathan Anstis. Maxim Philippart, well, the gassed up motorsport driver with that unfortunate retirement in round number 6 after taking that incredible pole position. Unfortunately, the conditions went against him in his slick shog Porsche, and understandably now the target's going to be to get himself back together today. But the Belgian driver could Ashley Brooks move it ahead of him, albeit the best part 44 points behind at the moment for Axis SimSport, but understandably with 2 7th places, it is last finishes where he wants to move into the top 5 if he can in terms of results. Hendrik Zilka and Eduardo Royes round off your top 12, and we'll keep your eyes out for both of them, but particularly Eduardo Royes, who put on that incredible run through the field in the early stage of the racing. But unfortunately, the slick tyres in him gave way in the wet, and it didn't quite work out for the Spaniard. But now coming on to the interclass last but by no means least in our Drivers' Championships. And what we can see here is that Andre Bentin, your leader at the moment on 460 points, well, he may have finished 3rd, and he definitely took the accolade, much like Andrea Miato in the elite class last time at the VIR, that so long as I get myself on the podium and pick up the points, I'm doing a good job. Because Robin Pownier finished 2nd in the end, the Sim Coach driver returning after missing the previous round. However, he was not able to stop the charge of one driver, but we'll come to that driver shortly, because first, we need to come to your 3rd place man, and that is Martin Kenyon, the Dexterous Motorsport Zemex driver, who was very impressive in qualifying, to be fair, starting 3rd in the racing class. However, when we did go green flag racing, despite starting on the wet tyres, he couldn't quite settle down on the compound, and it seemed as though his Lamborghini did not like the fact that the conditions were not consistent. The evolution went against him, and that's what saw him drop down the order to take 7th place. But the man who everyone will be keeping their eyes on today, 2-time winner now, Craig Hewlett, the misery we saw, of course, at Monza, he's put that to bed, and he's finally picked up that 2nd win, and now on 338 points, he will be going for that 3rd place to try and take it away from Martin Kenyon today. But can the Axis SimSport driver do it? Well, he's got the threat of Grant Miller, only 2 points behind, and Grant Miller not quite able to make it a top 5 last time out, came close, but the Phoenix Racing driver 9, there's still plenty of points to go, and the Scotsman is continuing to push forward. He's ahead of Nick Parks, who's only a further what is none other than 66 points behind. But the importance of Parks being 66 points behind is at one point he was in with a chance of a podium at PIR, but he slipped off the road, and unfortunately it slipped away from him. But we have seen a growing amount of form from him, and at any moment he could try and charge down that top 5. He's got the company of Tom Wheeler, only the best part of 12 points behind for three-wheeler racing by Phoenix. And then we do have Alexander Vingmark, who is still trying to recreate a top 10 finish from what was Monza, albeit came close to it for Beta Frost, but unfortunately a spin cost him that chance. He's on 224, and the best part there of 16 ahead of Shane Cotton for Phoenix Racing. And then Shane Connor rounding off that top 10, having gone from his trusty Acura to the Porsche, and the Collar Bros Racing driver getting acclimatised to it very well, taking that 4th place last time out. But when exactly is that first podium going to come for him? Could it happen today? David Young sits in 11th place at 192 points as well, but only behind based on result countback, with his best result being an 8th place finish in round number 4 to Connor's 4th place finish last time out. Then we have Daniel Pays there in 12th place at 170 points, not too far adrift. But coming on to the team's championship standing, last but by no means least, as we can see, here are your top 10, and at the very top, it has not changed too much between our leaders. Axis, SimSport Z, they are still holding on ahead of Beta Frost by 20 points. Both of the teams did not score too well last time out. Mixed results means they haven't really gained or lost on each other, but what has started to happen is the rest of the field is gradually gaining on them. Dexterous Motorsport Zemex lead the next pack, 3rd through to 8th, only separated by 74 points. It is incredibly tight right now in that group. 6 teams all together within that region, and Dexterous Motorsport Zemex lead the group and move from 4th to 3rd. Miracle Group M Esports, they have dropped from 3rd to 4th. They continue to oscillate back and forth like a yo-yo with Dexterous Motorsport Zemex. The two teams absolutely locking heads. And meanwhile, SimCoach, with a great set of results for Hobbs and Pioneer, well, they're moving forward now into 5th place from 6th. Meanwhile, UKSimRacing International, with that win for Nathan Anstis and some solid points for Rob Windsor, they have leapt all the way from 10th to 6th place on 716, only 4 ahead of Tartan Redstech, who of course would have been hoping for that win in the hands of was Petro Antonio Pasquarello, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out, and in the end they've fallen backwards into 7th place. But understandably, Freewheeler Racing by Phoenix are holding on to 8th for the moment on 700 points, just ahead of Phoenix Racing. And the Phoenix Racing team, they've dropped all the way from 5th to 9th after their troubles, particularly for Hayden Miller last time out. And then we do have Connor Bros Racing. Well, they're holding on to a spot inside the top 10. It is their first time inside the top 10 for this season, and well, that's due to the great performances both across the pro and the interclasses of Sean Connor and Shane Connor respectively. Who exactly is outside that top 10 meanwhile? Well, Altitude 3 Esports, they've dropped from 8th to 11th. That's the first time they've fallen outside the top 10 this season, and they are only the best part of what is none other than a few points behind, the best part of about 10 to 15 points behind, if my memory serves me correctly, and they have a comfortable gap to a non-memorable day for Old Dudes in Cars Amnesia, who are down in 12th, 42 points behind them. So therefore, there's still plenty of fighting to go on, and Altitude 3 Esports are going to try and get themselves back onto the screen as of the end of today. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about our host circuit before we do go racing, and it is of course the Bathurst Full Course, also known as the Mount Panorama Raceway, located near the town from which it takes its name in the Australian state of New South Wales. 3.86 miles in length or 6.21 kilometres, and at the core, 23 corners, most of them on the mountain, as we can see thanks to this brilliant circuit diagram provided us by iRacing.com, and a huge thank you to them, not just for the simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps that come with it. Many of these corners, household names, whether it be Hell Corner at turn number 1, all the way through to the Dipper at one of the highest points of the circuit, but the very highest, of course, being Skyline. We're an altitude change of 170 metres from the lowest point at Hell Corner to Skyline at turn at number 11, and all the way through here, overtaking is going to prove incredibly challenging unless you go for an overtake on the straight that takes you up to Griffin's Bend, that of course being between turns 1 and 2, known as the Mountain Straight. Alternatively, going down from Forest Elbow all the way to the Chase, and that being from turn 18 to turn 21, also known as the Conrod Straight. But otherwise, it's going to require commitment. It is going to require nerves of steel if you want to try and make a move over the mountain. Alternatively, you'll need to be bold on the brakes if you want to try and get the job done at Murray's Corner or Hell Corner. And for our drivers, well, I can tell you one thing. Rather than talking about the lap in this diagram, it's probably better if we get you an on-board lap here to show you just how significant the challenge is here at Bathurst. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's make our way back to circuit side and see how all the drivers are getting on in the final throws of the qualifying session. And so, as we do, well, currently the fastest driver out there with just under 10 minutes left of the clock is Andrea Miato. Right now, looking to be the quickest of everybody. We're 2 minute 1.211, and well, only 24 thousandths faster than Henrik Riestrand by comparison. And well, Henrik Riestrand, of course, a very quick driver in his own right. But Miato, when he's able to put his mind to it, to be fair, he normally does push himself right towards that front row of the grid. But on paper, at least, the average qualifying lap time has seen the Ford Mustang driver just be that slight bit faster over the course of the first 6 6 rounds, although if you exclude VIR as an anomaly and focus on the drier condition rounds more so, then therefore we would have to rule out Daytona, of course, after that was absolutely waterlogged. Well, understandably right now, the Ford Mustang driver will take the confidence that he is the quicker one-lap pace driver, but Miato is only behind him by a couple of hundredths, if that. But they're exchanging glances at each other at the very top, with Reece Saunders a further 2.5 tenths back by comparison, a tenth ahead of Hayden Miller, and then Jacob Stofko and Harvey Wheeler completing the top 6. And then we do have Matthew Croft currently out the car in the pit lane, so we can't get some camera footage of him. He's currently the fastest in the Pro Class overall by only the best part of half a tenth over Sean Connor. Sean and Shane there, I'm going to get them mixed up, aren't I, once again? But as he makes his way on down, well, Sean Connor right now looking very quick in this McLaren, and that's going against the grain perhaps here. We normally do expect the McLaren not to be the fastest at Bathurst, given the fact it's more of a handling car rather than a power car. And this circuit is a very interesting one because it does have that odd dynamic whereby all the corners are concentrated together in a single spot on the circuit, which is over the mountain, and it's not really wide enough to offer overtaking opportunities. So on paper, you may think, well, you don't really need a handling car if the fact nobody can overtake over the mountain. You really need a car which has got a lot of engine power and also the ability to max out those top end speeds as you head up the mountain straight and down from Conrod. And in principle, you would be correct. However, having a car that's very nimble through the corners over the mountain and also is able to get really good corner exits out of Hell Corner, which we've just seen Sean Connor give you a demonstration of, but also Murray's Bend at the end and the Chase Chicane just before it. There's also something to be said about that. Good corner exit speed is just as powerful in some respects as being able to be just very quick by pointing the car in the straight line and blasting the throttle. And as Sean Connor makes his way up the hill, we'll be hoping that perhaps he can dethrone Croft as Matthew Croft gets him ready to make his way onto another lap. He's just left the pit lane. There he is heading through Griffin's Bend, and as he heads up the rise now past the pedigree boards, where it's not too long before he does get to the cutting. But they're close together in the Pro Class. Where's your third place Pro driver? Where is Nathan Anstis right now? There he is in the 196 machine, and I do believe the team are running a tribute there to Lando Norris, intriguingly, and the pit, where's the pit member, has currently stood there in the overalls for McLaren as well. And indeed, I can tell you one for the team, absolutely proud, of course, of Lando Norris's achievements in becoming the 2025 Formula 1 World Champion. Anstis parts up at the moment. He is the best part of 4 tenths behind them, but he does have a comfortable 6 tenths of a second gap to Ross Young. Bit of an interesting split in the Pro Class. We don't normally see the gaps this big, and well, we do have the absence, I believe, of Maxime Philippard today as well, which is a bit of a shock, and that's going to open up the door as well for some other drivers to gain places that otherwise would not. But we do have a few drivers who've yet to put in laps, albeit none of them in the Pro Class. We've got 35 laps on the board, but we're still missing laps from Justin Noel, Neville Harris and David Young. And as far as I'm aware, there's no penalties coming into this round so far for any drivers, so therefore everyone is allowed to put in qualifying laps. But we've talked a lot about our Elite and Pro classes. What about our Inter drivers? Well, right now, there's one name singing the song at the very top. That is Andrew Montaigne, the fastest of everybody in Inter, with his lap there being a whole second off the overall pole time. So it is a 2:02.1 that he's been able to set. And well, the next closest is Robin Pownier, a whole half a second behind. And Andrew Montaigne right now definitely showing the McLaren has got some pace here. As meanwhile, Robin Pownier, second fastest, well, he is ahead of Craig Hewlett, and all the 3 big names that you come to expect at the very top, albeit it'd be rude of us not to talk about Martin Kenyon as well, to be fair, albeit Martin Kenyon is all the way down in 28th at the moment, not 8th in the Interclass, so qualifying not working out for him and his Lamborghini, but perhaps he'll be able to make something happen in the race. But as Pownier makes his way across the timing line, well, he's going to head on to another flying lap, and we owe you a flying lap, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, who are we going to get one on board with? Well, we are going to try and catch other drivers in the act, and I do believe, as that goes very well there for Robin Pownier, goes around coming out the corner, and we'll get somehow a bit too greedy there, and I suspect that's the rear right tyre flagging up on the exit curbing of turn number 1, and we'll perhaps going out to the grass. In fact, you can see the skid mark there in the grass where the tyres run into it, and that's what sent him all the way around and into the outside barrier, and we're very unfortunate there for Robin Pownier, but it goes to show you how hard he's pushing right now to try and get after this man's qualifying time in the Interclass, when he's pushed himself a little bit too hard, but thankfully he can get away with it and tow to the pits this time in the race. He won't be able to get away with it anywhere near as easily. But coming back to our train of thought, which is again on board lap with one of our drivers, and was Andrea Miato makes his way through the final corner, and let's jump on board with him for a flying lap of the Mount Panorama Raceway. So making his way up towards turn number 1, and as he does so, it looks his right hand side for his brake marker. It will be the hell corner, it'll be the 50-meter board. Through the left-hander he goes, dropping down to second gear, running the car out as wide as humanly possible, and now full throttle all the way up the hill in the Aston Martin Evo as he charges his way towards turn number 2. Here you'll notice lets the car gradually gravitate over towards the left-hand side of the circuit. This will be to open up the very heavily cambered right-hander of Griffin's Bend. As he gets ready, looks for his brake marker. It will be at the 50-meter board, drops onto the brakes, and coming all the way down to third gear. Apexing at 90 miles an hour, and now roaring his way up the hill. They're using all the exit curve as much as he dares to dream to do so, and now into the cutting, through the kink of 3, and hard onto the brakes at turn number 4. Get the car down to second gear, get it nestled into the wall, and now coming through the right-hander of Quarry. Blind on the apexes here, through 5 into 6. Now this is a quick right into left as you come out the corner, then immediately hook it left, and now into the triple left-hander. And turns 8, lift off for 9, and as he comes through in 4th gear, and now in towards McPhilly Park at turn number 10, mount the curb on entry, and then immediately pull the car as close to the wall as possible, but don't touch the apex curb unless you want to go onto the grass. Now going down over Skyline, in towards the dipper he goes here, on the brakes, gradually coming down to second gear, chuck the corner into dipper, full throttle as you blast out here to settle the rear of the car, and now going in towards what will be Forest Elbow, braking at 17, so that way he can settle the car down, now trail braking all the way down to first gear, nice and close to the wall, and on exit there for Andrea Miato. The amount of rotation he has in this Aston Martin is incredible. Normally you'd expect the car to go a little bit deeper there on exit, but I get the feeling the team have really focused on getting that car to turn for these low speed corners, and particularly when all the weight shifted forward, the rear of the car there was as light as a feather. That's how he was able to get such a good exit. We're coming down now through the Conrad straight. He brings the car to the left hand side. I think that's because he's given a toe to a teammate. And makes his way through the left into right of the chase, and not a full tilt, but as he does so there, now makes his way onwards. I think he was trying to help out none other than what was Petro Antonio Pasquarello, and we'll come into that time in line, making his way through Murray's corner, well, down to second gear, and across he comes, and as he does, with Andrea Miato, won't be a representative lap. That was a 204.665, but you can imagine it was a quick lap, despite the fact he had to back off, and that backing off did cost him the time, as his teammate now goes very deep at Hill corner, and well, we do jump off board there. But a huge thank you to our Tartan Breadstick driver and our Elite Championship leader from that onboard lap. And well, these two right now running together, but it hasn't quite worked out for Pasquarello. And they head upwards now, and they've only got 2 more laps remaining. Has there been any improvements elsewhere? Well, Matthew Croft right now, I think cognizant of the fact that if Sean Connor was able to improve, it would be a bit of a concern for the 113 driver, but in his own right now doing everything right. Whether you're on pole by 1,000th or a whole 10th, it doesn't matter. Winning is winning, as the Fast and Furious movies would say. And right now, Matthew Croft definitely getting things done the right way. He comes on around. Meanwhile, in the interclass, no change at the moment. Harvey Wheeler, meanwhile, the youngster from the Wheeler family, going on to a 201.559. Lovely lap there for him. The 234 Aston Martin Evo Vantage V8. Well, the Aston Martin is looking relatively strong so far this season. One of the newer cars in the GT3 class, but to be fair, front engine, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive. So front mid, we should really say, but the engine is located as far behind the front axle as it possibly can be to create a centre of mass. This car, which normally front engine, rear-wheel drive machines more associated with power on the straights rather than cornering ability, it has proven to be a bit of a dark horse in the corners and perhaps lacking a little bit with top end compared to the Ford Mustang, the BMW M4 Evo, or the Mercedes AMG Evo. But that's why we have a balance performance. It means that all the cars have unique traits, unique characteristics, beyond the characteristics they come with out of the factory. But with a minute or so left to go, well, one thing we were going to say about only what was very shortly was the fact that whilst Andrew Montini is not being caught up to Pownier and Hewlett, the gap between the two of them has come down to only 2 attempts. As Craig Hewlett's in the pit lane, so I think he feels as though job's done. He can't go any quicker than 19th place, and we'll be hoping now that nobody else is able to spring ahead of him. But are there any surprises further down in the order? Well, Shane Connor, he makes his way around there in the Corvette. We do apologise. We said he was racing the Porsche earlier on. In fact, he is in a Corvette. He made his way to the Corvette as of the previous round, and well, a bit loose there coming out of Skyline in towards the dipper, so therefore that's saying he's going to need to get settled down, or he's going to need to improve his technique coming through there. That's not a critique, to be fair. It's very easy for the car to come loose as you're braking downhill from Skyline into the dipper, and that's why what you do find is on the setup of the car, a lot of teams will run extra rear wing in order to get the rear of the car to bite down, particularly if it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, such as the Corvette C8 Stingray platform on which the Corvette Z06 GT3R is based. Of course, the controversial Corvette, given the fact that Corvettes have always been known to have the engine in the front, this is the very first where the engine has been behind the driver, and some would say it's blasphemy, but it has worked out very well in IMSA and the World Endurance Championship so far, and as Connor makes his way onwards, Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the clock strikes 0. So now that means all drivers will need to get their laps done because they're in overtime. And well, Shane Collar comes out the final quarter. This time he improved in the early section of the lap. He does take a personal best. He moves ahead of Nick Parks there to the tune of a grand total of 1.5 tenths. Now, will Parks respond as he comes on down? These two, of course, have been pretty close over the course of the season, and they are fighting right now for fourth place in the interclass in this qualifying session. Grant Miller's not too far behind either. Miller has just put in a personal best. He's on a final lap as well. So Miller being a further, what is, I do believe, 800ths behind Parks. It is looking tantalisingly close, as in fact Grant Miller has towed to the pit lane, so he's made a mistake somewhere. He's not going any quicker. Meanwhile, Parks comes across the line. How's it going to be this time? It's not an improvement for him, and Andrew Montine does not improve either. Meanwhile, Petro Antonio Pasquarello, he makes his way onwards. And as he comes up towards turn number 20, coming in towards the chase, will run his way on down. And right now, the 223 driver is still chasing that first win of the season. Well, coming in towards the braking zone here, he'll be hoping that he can go a bit further than 10th place in class. Or 16th overall, because this is definitely not what he's wanted, and we know he's got a lot more pace out there, but he has struggled today in qualifying, it would seem, compared to his teammate. And you can't say it's the car, given the fact that Tartan Restate are running Aston Martins with one on pole position, but not always the circuit favouring the driver as he comes across the line, and he will improve to a 202.593, but he stays 16th, as meanwhile, Andrea Miato launched himself even higher at the top on a 201.117, and that is exactly what is 117 thousandths faster than Henrik Riestrand. Well, a bit of a coincidence there, but I think not. And well, in the end, as Harvey Wheeler makes his way on down, well, right now he's on his final lap, but this has not been an improvement. And the other thing we were going to say, if you are sat there right now and competing in the Bathurst 12 hours of this weekend just gone, and you're thinking, what balance performance are we running? We are running the standard GT3 balance performance. We are not running the Bathurst one, if in case you're thinking, well, this isn't right now, to an outside observer, as meanwhile Harvey Wheeler there makes an outside observation of Murray's Bend and almost ends up in the wall as a result and immediately tows the car to the pit lane. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is qualifying complete, and it's Andrea Miato has taken pole position ahead of Henrik Riestrand overall and in elite. Meanwhile, on 7th, it's going to be your pro pole sitter Matthew Croft, who was in the end able to stay well clear of Nathan Anstis, and also Sean Connor. Sean Cotter takes second place in the pro class there in 9th, only half a 10th behind, but to be fair, half a 10th's a long time here. And then in the interclass, Andrew Montine, 10th overall, is your interpole sitter ahead of Robin Powney, who'll start 6 places back in 15th place there. And well, for Robin Powney, it's definitely going to be now a change to move forward, given the half a second gap between the two of them. But we'll wait and see what he can do today. And keep in mind that Craig Hewlett, third fastest the Inters, will be starting in 19th. But the circuit falls silent. And well, the wonderful thing about it, of course, is we won't have too long to wait before we do go racing here. But of course, coming up next is the 5-minute warm-up period for our drivers. And it gives our drivers an opportunity to cool on down, get themselves mentally set, perhaps even take liquid refreshment or a bathroom break. And of course, it gives you guys and girls tuning in at home an opportunity to do exactly the same, because once we do go green flag racing, if the previous 6 rounds of racing here in this championship have been anything to go by, you can expect you will not want to leave your chair or wherever you're sat, or whatever modicum you're using in order to tune in today. You'll definitely want to be glued to the screen all the way for the 60 minutes of racing action. But with the warm-up getting underway, Petro Antonio Pasquarello making his way onwards here, and as he does so, well, the 223 driver deciding that he can't wait to go racing, so therefore he's going to make his way back out onto the circuit. And well, as we mentioned previously, particularly last time out at VIR, it was more to gauge the conditions and the nature of the circuit. We're here right now, it's more to keep the adrenaline pumping, and well, Bathurst is one of those circuits where you do want to keep the blood flowing as much as humanly possible. It is not a circuit whereby you want to be in a mental space where you're panicking or you're fretting about the circuit. So I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm one of the most nervous ones when I race at Bathurst. This circuit terrifies me. Even after doing hundreds of laps on it, I can tell you it is not a circuit that I approach confidently, and I suspect a few drivers here, even in the elite and the pro classes, let alone our inters, will also be feeling the same with regards to this track being a tricky one. Now, of course, one driver we have not made a mention to, and we do owe him a mention, is Ryan Littlemore, who has joined the grid as of today. He's a newcomer. Unfortunately, this is not Ryan, this is Darren Sharples. Ryan's currently in the pit lane, not in the car, so we can't say hello to his McLaren on screen, but he's joined the grid for the remainder of the season, and you'll see him running out there in the number 18 McLaren, the privateer from the United Kingdom, and we wish him all the best of luck on his debut, and well, we'll definitely get some previews of his car in due course and get to see him out on the circuit having some fun. And in fact, he's qualified right in the middle of all your Inter drivers and right where you want to be on a debut round. But the old Duty Cars midlife crisis driver here of of Darren Sharples. Well, the team will definitely feel as though they were in a midlife crisis last time out at VIR. Things did not go right at all for them, nor did their sister team Amnesia. It was not a happy day, and indeed right now the old dudes in cars definitely needed to find a bit of youth with regards to their pace, because it has not gone right for the last couple of rounds. But to be fair, championships giveth, championships taketh, and it's all about how you keep it together over the whole season. But we do know that old dudes in cars are a very happy team. All their drivers, to be fair, very fun, very friendly off the road and on the circuit as well. They do have a little rivalry in amongst each other, let alone with all their rivals. And Darren Sharp was being one of the core members of the team, and having been part of the team now, if my memory serves me correctly, for the best part of at least 2 years. Indeed, they have been a mainstay of the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship grid as well. I think they made their official debut as a team on the grid back in Season 8, I want to say, because previously, Darren Sharples, or Daz as he's known to friends, they used to race under the UKSimRacing banner, if I remember correctly, similar cars to James Connolly's car, and, well, then made their way to the old dudes in cars team. And Darren Sharp was a big constituent of that team. Meanwhile, look to William Arneson, the Beta Frost driver, who right now, well, he's got to try and carry on forward after that win at VIR. And what he knows, if it's another win today ahead of Andrea Miato, he may just be able to take that championship lead. But it is so close at the top of the elite class right now. There is nothing separating those drivers. And Andrea Miato, he's taking the pole position. He's done the hard work in qualifying. But is that hard work going to make the dream work in the race? And whilst we have 2 minutes, so you might be asking, what exactly can we expect in the race? Firstly, overtaking is not impossible. Expect, particularly in the open lap, some drivers will go for do-or-die moves to try and get track position of their rivals. But we also do have the constant threat if a driver makes even the smallest of mistakes over the mountain, a move can potentially be made up there, but you've got to be brave to do so. Also, to add to that, we do have a mandatory tow zone in effect today between turns 2, which is of course Griffin's Bend, and turn 19 at Forest Elbow, whereby if a driver is involved in a spin or an incident which has their car pointing in a wrong direction, they cannot just rejoin the racing immediately, or they are at significant risk of essentially causing a secondary incident with other cars coming up. They are required to tow to the pit. It doesn't matter where they are in the race, they must tow. If they do not, and they are then deemed to have caused a further incident, they will have a much harsher penalty applied for causing that follow-up incident compared to what we would normally apply here at SimRacing International. It is a rule that's carried over from the UK SimRacing Community Series all the way through its history, and the idea is because the mountain is so narrow, we do not want to risk essentially seeing cars tumble into each other like a pack of cards or dominoes and all go falling over. And indeed, once it goes wrong over the mountain, as many of you may have seen, of course, in the recent real-life 12 hours of Bathurst, and we won't recall or talk about exactly what happened there, but those in the know, well, you'll definitely know it's been all over social media about an incident occurred coming in towards Forest Elbow. Well, it can be very grim in reality, and of course we want to try and keep the racing as realistic as possible, because as they say, on a simulator, it's about 60% of the way there to doing the real life racing. You may not be able to feel the G-forces, but everything else, the emotions, the physicality of driving the car, everything else is very much real here. And for our drivers, it means a lot to them. But as our warm-up session comes to a close, also expect battles and strategy, no doubt about that. But for all that and more, here we go then, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time to head to the grid for round number 7 of the championship here at the Mount Panorama circuit in Australia. And as all the drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our one and only race day in round 7 of the Sunday GT3 Championship Season 17, brought to you by UKSimRacing and hosted by SimRacing International. Andrea Miato takes pole position for Tartan Breztech, the Italian driver, just ahead of Henrik Riestrand for Beta Frost, but 2 of the big belligerents right at the top of the championship standings in the elite class. Rhys Saunders starts behind him in third for Altitude 3 Esports, 9, 4 attempts down in qualifying. He's got to make up some headway. If not, he's only less than an attempt ahead of Hayden Miller, who starts 4th for Phoenix Racing, 9. He needs the points, as otherwise this is going nowhere fast. And then Hayden Miller will be joined by Harvey Wheeler behind, starting 5th for Free Wheeler Racing by Phoenix, head of Jakub Stovko, who completes your top 6 all elite drivers there for Miracle Group M Esports. Starting 7th, it is going to be Matthew Croft, the pro pole sitter for Axis SimSport Z, head of Tom Bland for Altitude 3 M Esports, who starts 8th. Sean Connor begins this one with his highest qualifying points of the season in the pro class, 9th, and all that's overall, and 2nd in the pro class. The Connor Bros drive being joined on that row by none other than Andre Montine for Axis SimSport Z, who starts in that 10th place there and is your Interpole sitter. What a great job from him to make it another pole position, but most importantly to squeeze inside the top 10. Outside that top 10 in 11th place, it is Nuno Varagre who returns to the grid, the privateer, and the Portuguese driver there in the 2.79, just outpacing Bathurst William Arneson, who struggled in qualifying and will be starting down in 12th place. Well, that's definitely unexpected, but that's where he's going to be in this one. Then we do have Nathan Anstice starting in 13th there for UKSimRacing McNish, third of your pro drivers, just ahead of the main man he's battling in the championship, Kyle Roy, the pro championship leader who starts 14th with late improvements, squeezing him very close there to his UKSimRacing rival, the Group M Academy driver knows he's got some work to do. Robin Paunia begins second in the Interclass, 15th overall for SimCoach, ahead of Pietro Antonio Pasquarello, who right now knows that he's got some work to do for Tartan ResTech after it all went so wrong at the very end at VIR, and it's all gone very wrong in qualifying so far today. But the Italian driver will have behind him two more elite drivers in the form of Max Wheeler for Freewheeler Racing by Phoenix, and Old Dudes and Cars and Nesia's Casper Rotner. Behind the Dane, it's Craig Hewlett, who starts third of your Inter drives at Axis in Sport Y, ahead of Ross Young for DXT and Motorsports and Completion Top 20. And outside the top 20, 21st, it is going to be Stephen Hobbs ahead of Shane Connor. And the SimCoach driver, in the end, not quite able to match up to his previous best qualifying performances, but Shane Connor, meanwhile, definitely putting one of his best qualifying performances together this season. And then we're going to have Nick Park starting in 23rd there, ahead of Grant Miller for Phoenix Racing, with Daniel Payes in 25th for Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia, ahead of Ashley Brooks at Axis in Sport Z. Eduardo Roy starts 27th for Axis in Sport Y, ahead of DXT Motorsports' Martin Kenyon, who struggled in qualifying his Lamborghini. And then we will have Rob Windsor starting 29th for UKSimRacing Niche, ahead of Shane Cotton for Phoenix Racing. Behind them, outside the top 30, it's Darren Sharples and Alexander Bingmark, with James Connolly and Tom Wheeler on the 17th row, Ryan Littlemore and Justin on the penultimate row, and then it's going to be none other than Neville Harris and David Young who complete that order. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the field makes its way around into the final corner, and it's to Andrea Miato to take us to the green for 60 minutes of racing. And it's lights out and away we go for a one and only race today as our drives all the way down towards turn 1. And Miato there on the inside going defensive immediately, as you can see. Strand trying to go all the way around the outside of him. Is it going to work? The answer is no, not quite. Miato holds onto that lead for now as they make the way up the hill towards turn 2. As they roar the way in towards the next braking zone. Well, meanwhile, the whole field makes its way through the opening few corners very nicely so far. We say the opening few corners because, of course, turn 23 is where a lot of drivers start their race. Rob Windsor starting from the pit lane. He's going to be trying to make his way up through the field as quickly as he can. But meanwhile, we can see there Jakob Stofko has leapt his way into 5th place already as Tom Bland is going to be elbowed out a little bit there, battling side by side with Harvey Wheeler. But in towards the cutting they come for the first time, and with 2 wide here, somebody's got to give way at some point, and Harvey Wheeler holds off Bland and gets ahead of him coming through turn 4. Further back, Matthew Croft still leading in the pro class here as they all score their way over the mountain now. Further back, Daniel Payes and gained 3 places already. As Saints got very rough for Ashley Brooks and Grant Miller just out of camera shot there. Both drivers have towed to the pits immediately. Justin Noel has been caught up in some sort of altercation as well. So we'll try and get a replay of that when we can. But Daniel Payes right now has got a whole group of cars behind. That's 2 wide. No, good lord. And Shane Connolly completely backs out there with Eduardo Royce, and it goes around for Pasquarello. It's all gone wrong for the Tartan ResTech driver who pulls his way out the way immediately. He will be able to continue racing there. Well done to him for getting that car turned, and he will rejoin the inside. But I wonder with the damage he's picked up, whether that car's going to go to the pit lane right at the end of this lap. So it does not look a happy car as Ryan Littlemore meanwhile just squeezes his way ahead, and there is your newcomer today, the privateer in the Marlboro McLaren. And well, that's a good bit of alliteration there, and we love the Zems, and right now we love to see the number 18 out there. It looks quite smoking hot, to be fair, the car. But meanwhile, as we put the cigarettes away, we come back to the front of the field, and already 1.2 seconds away is Andrea Miato running away from Henrik Strand. And meanwhile, it's got Hayden Miller all over the back of him. Hayden Miller's had a great start, to be fair, going from 4th to 3rd, ahead of Reece Saunders. And right now, well, Miller, I definitely get the feeling he's got the bit between his teeth where it's gone wrong so many times this season. Right now, he doesn't want it to go wrong any further, because otherwise he will be ruling himself out of championship contention by the end of today. But further back, we do have Casper Brotner battling here with none other than Craig Hewlett. Hewlett trying to make ground. In fact, Hewlett has got ahead of Robin Paunia. Well, that's a turn for the books there. He's gained a lot of places, Hewlett. Paunia's dropped several places, so Hewlett's had a phenomenal start. We'll have to get a replay of that when we can. Become the end of lap number 1. Well, Hewlett now up into 2nd place and into ahead of Paunia, who's right behind him. And Nick Parks, meanwhile, well, he's gained places up into 4. Shane Connor, of course, had that poor run over the mountain in the opening lap. And Parks right now, definitely, of course, his best result of the season, albeit it's early doors yet. But understandably, he'll be taking a bit of confidence now and hoping he can keep it together with the remaining distance. as they come. And after what is lap number 1 then, the running order of your top 10 is as follows. It's Andrea Miato, 1.5 seconds clear of Henrik Lee-Strand. Then we have Hayden Miller, followed by Reece Saunders. Jakob Stofko is in 5th, ahead of Harvey Wheeler in 6th. Then we do have Tom Bland in 7th place. The Altitude 3 eSports driver right now, glued to the back of Wheeler, with William Arneson in 8th, having gained 4 places since the start. He's made his way into the top 10 as the sun shines for him. Then we do have Matthew Croft, currently your pro leader for Access Sport Y. He's lost 2 places overall, but he hasn't lost any in the class. Ahead of Andrew Montine, your inter-leader, who's right behind him. And then it's Sean Connor, who rounds off your 11th place run, with the best of the rest driver there in 2nd in the class right now, having lost 2 places overall since the very start. But he's still giving chase there to Croft. No wonder right now whether the McLaren driver believes he can make it happen today, because he's definitely been able to glue himself to the back of the cross so far, much like he did in qualifying. Albeit I think he would like to get the other Access Sport car, the inter-leader Andrew Montine, out the way. And I wouldn't imagine here that Access Sport Z's driver is going to be playing too much teamwork initially. Well, he will be trying to fuel save, but I don't imagine he's going to act as a defensive wall versus Sean Connor, because A, will that raise a few question marks in the studio room after racing, but also B, in the fact that he's also got to worry about Craig Hewlett and Robin Powney trying to carve their way through the field. But into the middle of the road goes Montine, so Sean Connor's not going to have an easy ride to this, looking around the outside. The battle of the McLarens here, and in the end, one of the two is going to have to get the victory of this one. And well, it's going to be Montine on the outside there. Sean Connor goes all in for this one at the chase, and will 2 wide they enter, 2 wide they exit. A little bit power oversteer for both cars there. Sean Connor sliding loose, and suddenly here comes Kyle Roy. Roy's going to look around the outside of him now, down to Murray's Bend, and the Mirko Group M Academy driver from Scotland. We know that's going to be a bridge too far there to go for the move around Murray's. He decides to cut back in. Lovely sweep back, but look who's right behind him. It's Nathan Anstis here as they come across the timing line. And going on towards lap number 3, well, it's going to be defensive drive all the way from Connor, but Anstis right now says, I'm going for it. And meanwhile, Kyle Roy there just leaves all the space, runs out a little bit wide. So Nathan Anstis does get into the head of the 171 Corvette, but as they make the way on the rise right now, you'll definitely see that Corvette is 5.5 litre V8 engine, outpacing the, what is the 6-cylinder 4 litre Porsche machinery. Heading on the rise, in they go, but the flat 6 screams in anger now, wanting that place back, as meanwhile the smooth crankshaft of that Corvette, silent by comparison, and coming all the way through turn number 2 and up towards 3. This does fall back for now, but trying to seize those opportunities as best as he can. Meanwhile, Jakob Stofko has found his way past Harvey Wheeler in towards the cutting. How it's not over yet as they come through Quarry Bend. One of them's going to have to back out because there's a wall on the outside, and he makes contact to the wall, does Stofko, and immediately there, Bland looks one way, then the other. He's going to squeeze them through in towards turn number 9. He rides the curb, and then they somehow just about avoid making contact there. My good lord! And well, you never go too wide out of 6 into 7, and Stofko's car is definitely damaged as he falls off the road at McPhillamy Park. He's going to crawl on home at this rate, and as they make the one around, the Mirko Group M eSports car from Canada is absolutely winded at this moment, but I think Stofko's trying to get himself back together, but that knock to the wall definitely, it might have looked gentle, but I can assure you one thing, it's not. And that front left in particular right now, the suspension plus the tyre will all be feeling very much hammered by it, but Stofko's going to try and keep it together. He'll be in the toe of Arneson, but he's losing straight line speed. Look at it, and you can see it as he brings himself over to one side of the road initially. And I think right now the steering wheel is not pointing straight, as Matthew Croft will try and catch up where he can, and well, he won't want to catch Stofko at the worst possible time. Stofko really struggling to keep that car pointing in a straight line at the moment. He's doing his best to, but I really won't be surprised if that's coming into the pits at the end of this lap for repair work. And unfortunately, if he does have to bring it in as he runs wide there at the chase, that says everything. It comes loose. Croft in the end just avoids being collected with the Corvette, and Stofko goes around. He almost survived to the pit lane, and well, car into the barrier there. I think he will try and get it turned, but he won't be able to go now until the end of the run of the field through. As meanwhile, Henrik Strand's into the pit lane, so Strand has picked up some damage of his own. And the Beta Voss driver, sadly, in the 2-2-1. It's gone very wrong for him as he gradually crawls his way to a stop. And well, there's going to be repair work there. We will get a replay of that instant, and I believe Stofko has had to tow. He has not been able to get it going once again. But whilst their race comes to a halt, meanwhile, the battle for second place in Pro is definitely building here as we see Hayden Miller falling backwards. Hold up a second. What's happened to Hayden Miller? I think he's gone wide at turn number 1. He's losing places hand over fist here as they come in towards the braking zone for 2. And Connor right now holding off Kyle Roy as we all Nathan Anstis has not been able to get past Andrew Montine. So Andrew Montine's moved forward. However, it's the pros in particular are really picking the way through. And Matthew Croft right now, the pro leader's got to be worried about the fact only 2 seconds behind this all these cars. But Hayden Miller defends on the inside there, in towards the cutting. Let's go on the outside of Quarry Bend. And right now it's not going to work out here for the 281 driver. As we can see, they both have to filter out in the end. He gets close to the wall. And Andrew Montine holding on to here. But this is not the place you want to be as the interleader, fighting with an elite driver, plus also pros coming up behind you. And it's so so close over the mountain right now, and the remaining driver here, well, he's got to dig deep as here comes Hayden Miller, who's going to go too wide over the skyline. Keep it clean, guys. This is risky as they come down the hill, and Montine backs off immediately and lets Miller go. Smart driving from both of them there. Shows you can go too wide from the skyline into the dipper, but goodness me, you've got to be smart about it. And Hayden Miller comes back on throw. What a turnaround there, and that's before we consider fighting going on further down the order. Including Tom Wheeler here battling with Ryan Littlemore as they make the way out of Philly Park. This could be too wide over Skyline, and Littlemore puts the brakes on early there. Justin Noel tries to come through but decides not to, so Littlemore being cautious, which I think caution is the best part, particularly if you're not too experienced at racing at Bathurst. Not saying, to be fair, he's not experienced, but I think they're deciding that it's actually better to lose the 11th place in Interclass now rather than potentially lose this car, and is the car of Tom Wheeler with it. As Wheeler goes a bit deep, they're coming down the hill in towards Forest Elbow, so Littlemore now back on the attack, and we ride on board here with your 30th place driver as McLaren looks to try and come back. Now, the problem is, of course, he is chasing one of the fastest cars in a straight line, that Ford Mustang, known for being incredibly quick in its top gear. A bit Littlemore with the tow here, and the fact I think they've set the car up for straight line speed. Here he comes. Littlemore right now, he's going to be on the inside at turn 20, and in the end, Wheeler backs off there, lets it go. And I think in doing so, he's actually brought Justin Noel right into the fight alongside him. Noel's going to try and go outside to inside, and he'll get that done just about as David Young, meanwhile, now looks at this and thinks, can he sneak 12th place in the Interclass off of Wheeler? Well, it's going to be a bit of an ask here, that far back coming down in towards Murray's Bend, but that might keep up for the next one, albeit that's going to be a run deep there from Wheeler. I don't think it's going to be long before Young gets the confidence on the South African driver right now in that BMW M4 Evo. Well, it's a logistical nightmare racing, but it's definitely a logistical dream right now if he can go for it into Hell's Corner. Not going to work. He's going to back off there, and they will stay as is for a little bit longer. Coming from them to the 10th place battle in the elite class. This is Strand trying to make his way out the inside of Pasquarello, and as it comes on around, it is going to be a move there for Strand, pretty straightforward in towards Griffin's Bend, but I suspect both drivers right now wanting to work together here to move forward, given their races have not gone forward since the start, and they've both gone significantly backwards. But as things cool down for a brief moment, well, ladies and gentlemen, we've had an absolutely incredible opening few laps, no doubt about it, and I think we've got a bit more to go. As hold up, oh, he's around in the middle of the road for Casper Brotner. Oh, it's all gone wrong there for the old Disney Cars Amnesia driver. He does tow in the end, and I think by the time he's getting ready to tow, unfortunately, all the cars that came through the seat of the instant, they'd already been too late. And well, indeed, there's always a driver reaction time there. I think you might be shaken by what happened, but multiple cars being collected in that instant. We'll get a replay of that, but that's Daniel Pace, and also I believe Ashley Brooks being caught up in that one, although not 100% certain. But meanwhile, as Carl Roy here continues to fight with Hayden Miller, well, it's the battle of the Corvettes, and I suspect right now the Scotsman is going to let his fellow countryman on go, as Miller will try and go around the outside into the inside of the chase. And well, for Carl Roy, this is more about just simply letting an overall position go to gain some time in Miller chasing down Sean Connor and Matthew Croft. We'll see what's to be there as they come down towards Murray's Bend once again. But from them, we are now going to take a trip back in time and look at some of the big moments from the start of this race, ladies and gentlemen. So do oblige and enjoy this as we go back to the open lap and what exactly went wrong for Pietro Antonio Pasquarello. So this was your race start, and well, he started a long way down the order back in 12th place as they went too wide, and then it was him. Oh, there was a bit of contact there under braking with Nathan Anstis. I think Anstis in the end just tapping the rear of your 233, and that sent him on around straight away there. But immediately getting back to the race, and he pretty much fitted back in like a jigsaw piece there. And well, not exactly what you'd expect, but still, that's the way it's gone for him. I think you'd be grateful it wasn't worse. We then had this at the run of the cutting for what was Ashley Brooks and Grant Miller. So they were further back. Too wide they went in towards the corner. Brooks going around the outside, lost the rear of the car down the marbles and collected Miller in the side. They got pinned to the wall, and then all the field checking up immediately there. Well done to everyone for doing so, but a bit of a nasty moment between them. We had this for Justin Noel only moments later. I think this might have been Noel being caught up at the back of this long group as he made one space. Yes, they all stopped. So well done to everyone for this. Very great awareness, and then they all went racing straight away. Although cheeky move there from Tom Wheeler to go around the outside of Alexander Vingmark. I think Alexander will not be too pleased the fact he lost the place there to a bit of cheeky manoeuvring for the three-wheeler racing driver, but that's the way that one's gone. Then we had this on lap number 3 for Jakub Stofko, where the Mirko Group M esports driver was battling hard, albeit on the back of Tom Bland, and he had that impact with the wall, of course, and then had a further contact with the inside wall at McPhillamy, and that's what opened up the door. But can we see what happened between them beforehand? I think we can. This was the moment where he hit the wall. So, coming up the hill firstly, they were making the way in towards Griffin's Bend, and what in the end, Stofko went a little bit deep. Did so. Well, Stofko had lost the momentum here as they made their way in towards turns 2, 3 and 4, but they were too wide, still battling hard, and in the end, Stofko on the inside. Now, at some point, somebody had to back off, but neither driver wanted to back off for this whole situation, and was great racing between Wheeler and Stofko. And then suddenly, on the outside there, runs to the wall, hits the wall nastily, and that's exactly what happened. I think we had contact between Arneson and also potentially Stofko a little bit later on in that sequence. But after that, well, of course, we did have what happened to Hayden Miller on lap number 4, and this was Miller going wide at turn number 1, we do believe. And so he made his way into the braking zone. As he did so, lost the rear of the car, in fact. So coming out the corner, much like what we saw earlier on for Robin Powney in qualifying, into the barrier, but the rear of the car holding together. I don't know, they built that Corvette out of, but it's very strong metal, I can tell you that. And well, then we had this only moments later for Casper Brockner on lap number 5. And do bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, as we do try to bring that replay. Here we go. Well, in fact, this is Hayden Miller having a glance with the wall. So I don't think we've got the replay of Casper Brockner there. I think it might have glitched out. Let's see if we can get that again. And here we go. So this is what happened to Casper Brockner as he made his way in towards Philly Park shortly. Lost the rear of the car beforehand, and this was the huge moment where he's on the grass, holding the brakes, trying to get it stopped. He can't turn at this point because the car's moving. He's trying to stop it. To say in the end, unfortunately, well, being collected there by 12 drivers, and well, it all went wrong for him and Daniel Pays, and also there, I do believe Shane Connor almost got collected. But those are your big moments, ladies and gentlemen, and it's back to your live racing. We go. And well, as we do, still plenty of time left in this race, no doubt about it, as we do come back now with the quarter of the race almost complete. But what else is to come before this one is all said and done? Well, at the front of the field, Andrea Miato has now carved a 5.6 second gap over Reece Saunders. Harvey Wheeler a little bit further back and pushing hard on the back of him right now. Meanwhile, we have had an incident, I'm hearing off camera, for Pietro Antonio Pasquarello, who's dropping it all the way down. Where on earth has that happened? There he is. That's coming out of the dipper, so something's got very wrong for him, but he has been able to get it turned. He was off racing line. I suspect that's why he's not towed to the pit lane, so he's been able to rejoin safely. It's gone very wrong for him. And we're just in front there, you do have Tom Wheeler trying to poke his way on past. Where's the machinery of Shane Connor, who's definitely not had the happiest of days in the office. As he drives head on down. Well, meanwhile, just in front of them, we do have Darren Sharp, who's finding himself in a bit of an exchange with Alexander Vingmark as the old Dudes and Cars midlife crisis Mustang. Well, they do say you buy a Ford Mustang or a V8 when you're having a midlife crisis, and right now Darren Sharple's not able to use his midlife crisis Mustang to an advantage, as in Vingmark does hold him off. The Beta Ross driver there getting his elbows out in the Porsche 992, and who can blame for that? He's enjoying himself out there, and we love to see it. But as we do look behind, Eduardo Royes, and definitely a McLaren that has been bruised and beaten a little bit. Well, Rob Windsor tries to look for a move. Wynn's not too happy about something now. I wonder if he feels as though he was cut off there by Royce under braking, or whether the two of them had a bit of an altercation before we come back to your live racing. And if so, will Rob Windsor therefore flash his headlights using the proverbial racing Morse code? Of course, unfortunately, we don't have a Morse code translation book here. It's even more cryptic than the Enigma code. As meanwhile, Justin Noel, well, that's not cryptic. That's the spin coming out of turn 1. He does what Hayden Miller did only moments ago, and the American driver goes on around there in the 215. And unfortunately for him, as he tries to get himself pointed back in the right direction for the SJS Racing team, but now he's got even more work to do. It's coming out the pits behind him, that is Grant Miller. But from there, we come all the way back up the order to Kyle Roy. And Roy right now running in 4th place in the pro class. Well, you can see the Miracle Group M Academy driver. He's lost the top 3 of the pros, albeit we say lost equally because of the fact he's 3 seconds behind Nathan Anstis. But the point being, he's a bit far back at the moment to really get involved with them. So he might have had a bit of a brush with the wall there on the exit of Forest Elbow. As meanwhile, I'm hearing in my ear, there has been an incident for Ryan Littlemore and Rob Windsor. Both of them have towed to the pit lane. We'll get a replay of that when we can. But meanwhile, for Kyle Roy, definitely a race that's going a little bit backwards rather than forwards, with Robin Pownier with him for company. And Robin Pownier has actually lost 2nd place in the interclass to Craig Hewlett. We didn't quite see how that happened, but he has lost that position, and therefore Craig Hewlett is still on a charge through the order. And understandably, Hewlett, he'll be hoping he can make it another win. He'd like to make it 2 in a row today if he can. His next target, of course, is his sister Axis SimSport machinery of Andre Montaigne. And Montaigne, the championship leader, won't necessarily want to lose out to what is effectively a teammate. Of course, the number 1 rule of motorsport is beat your teammate. The second rule is don't take your teammate out of the racing. And Craig Hewlett right now definitely trying to live up to rule number 1 when he can. But Reece Saunders, Harvey Wheeler, these two together, where it's gone wrong for others, it's not going wrong for them, it's going right so far. If they keep it right, it's going to be nice and tight up the mountain as we ride on board with the 234. Now, at this point, the Aston Martin driver of Harvey Wheeler, well, we have seen he's confident of being able to go too wide over the mountain. He is not afraid to go battling. We saw that with Jakob Stofko, albeit unfortunately to Stofko's demise at turn number 6, albeit there's no contact between the two of them. Stofko on the outside line picked up some of the marbles and the car understeered to the barrier for the apex at turn number 7. But Wheeler here right now knows he's now up against a different character, Rhys Saunders, of course. Well, the great thing about Rhys, to be fair to him, is the fact he's a very fair racer, but also he does have a little bit of a devil on his shoulder, which does always tempt him every so often to go for some defensive moves that others would perhaps not dare to dream to do. And I can imagine here at Bathurst, if Harvey Wheeler wants to go too wide with Rhys Saunders, Saunders is going to oblige him and want to go too wide as well. He is definitely one of those entertaining racers out. They always get those brilliant characters on the grid, of course. Harvey Wheeler, meanwhile, by comparison, a little bit more, in a way, some would say, reserved, although today he's really come out fighting all colours. As he makes way down behind, we see building up in the slipstream here, and well, he's going to look for the move at this rate, or is he? He does. He looks the inside, but that's going to be the outside here in towards the chase, and will brakes nice and early. They're trying to get Saunders to outbrake himself to the apex, but Saunders has seen it all before, and Wheeler looks one way, then the other. He's not going to be able to find a way through this time around. Now, will a pit stop make the difference here? Arguably, yes, but the problem is neither driver wants to pit right now, because to do so is to risk coming out right in the thick of traffic. And Saunders now has a very poor run coming out of Murray's Bend. Well, Wheeler's going to have a chance here looking around the outside. So here they go. On to lap number 10, around the outside. Can he get the run? We get a nose ahead there, and Saunders right now on a very tight line, but Harvey Wheeler in the end takes the rallycross approach, and in the end that's not going to work out there. Road racing today is allowed only, and let's go drop him back to 3rd place. And Tom Bland and William Arneson now going to catch up. So Saunders there made his Mustang wide enough, and Harvey Wheeler, for all the enthusiasm, was a little bit too enthusiastic, one could say, to try and make that move. And now Bland in his Ferrari 296, the car that is very quick on the straights if it's got a slipstream, given how long its 6th gear is and its 5th gear. All right, now Bland will feel as though now this is his chance to try and take the podium, and with it support his teammate of Saunders and help the team get themselves back into the top 10, because of course Altitude Frame Esports had a dramatic decline in the previous round, dropping from 8th to 11th, and they won't want that to continue. But Matthew Croft, meanwhile, your pro leader, leading a bit of a lonely race in the class at the moment. Sean Connor is the best part of 4 seconds behind, as we show you the class standings there on your left-hand side of your screen. And we'll top 10 of each one, as Matthew Croft right now knowing that his job, it's not done yet. He's got to maintain this pace for the remainder of the race, and that's not an easy feat at any circuit, let alone here in Australia. As he gets ready to now attack the downhill segment, we can see the Hayden Miller behind him, and then Sean Connor not too far further behind, coming towards the end of the opening 20 minutes. And the 155 driver right now, at least, well, known for Connor Bros, if he wants that first win, he's going to have to find a bit of an inventive way to get ahead. Now, what can he do apart from delivering very good laps? Well, he can think about strategy, as he does bottom out the car. You can see the sparks flying from the underside. That's where essentially the bottom of the car is scraping against the tarmac. That's how low they run these cars by default. The ride heights of these cars permitted to be no lower, if my memory serves me correctly, than 55 millimeters. It depends on the circuit, of course, and how high the curbs are for safety reasons, but normally the lowest they can go is no lower than 55 millimeters. But if you run a very low ride height, well, understandably, that means you've got less drag on the car on the straights, but also ride height really does change the attitude of the car in the corners. Particularly, they'll normally have the rear of the car higher than the front, with the idea being, therefore, you make the car very loose over the back at corner apex, so that way the rear comes around as quickly as humanly possible. But the more you imbalance that car, the more you pitch the aero of the car forward, and that means that suddenly the car gets less and less stable. But right now, looking strong and stable, Matthew Croft, as he lets Hayden Miller go there in towards Hell's Corner. No real difference to him, given the fact he's only losing overall position. But meanwhile, here's a bit of a change up in Elite, because it's Arneson versus Bland. And William Arneson right now trying to go around the outside. Does Bland have the brakes in that Ferrari? Yes, he does, to keep it too wide. Oh, Arneson goes a bit deep there. He was not expecting the fight to continue. I think he was assuming that Bland was going to let that go. The attitude of that Mercedes there definitely was one, not lazy necessarily, perhaps a little bit complacent, you could say, in the fact the way he set the line up there, well, in the end it touched all the marbles and almost went to the barrier. And, well, it's very easy to carry too much speed in towards Griffins on that outside line. But Arneson gets himself back together as we do jump on board the front bumper. Through turn number 9 he goes, and also right now definitely showing he's got the fangs in the Beta Frost car. And keep in mind, of course, that right now he wants to close that championship lead down as he runs wide there, coming out to McPhillamy Park. Well, I wonder whether the fact he's struggling a little bit instead then, or alternatively whether he's just been shaken up by the battle that went slightly wrong. And of course, that's one of the things about a circuit such as Bathurst. When you make one mistake, suddenly it affects your concentration for the next sequence of corners. It can affect your entire lap. And well, after you completely make errors on one lap, normally you start making errors on the next one and the one after. It's really one of those circuits where you have to be fully dialed in. You cannot mentally switch off at any point. But here's a bit of switching of places as three-wheeler racing by Phoenix's Tom Wheeler tries to find his way past Max Wheeler. In fact, no, it's the other way round. We'll come back to that shortly because we've had a change of position for Shane Cotton. Moving up ahead of James Conley, who almost looks like he's heading towards the barrier. In fact, Conley's going slow here, coming through, turn away around the outside. He goes Alexander Wingmark. You don't normally see that. Well, they're going to be too wide here towards but Philippi. They're going to go for it. Wingmark on the outside. He's still there. Here comes Darren Sharples as well. They make it a menage a trois at the skyline. And it's the perfect scenic view for a group meeting. But as they come down, Wingmark's there. And what a lovely bit of driving of Alexander Wingmark. How about that? Takes the place back of James Conley, going around the outside down for his skyline into the dipper. And well, ladies and gents, I can tell you one thing. If he doesn't win the championship this season, Alexander Wingmark may have just taken the contender for move of the season for that one. James Conley was fair to him, to be fair. They had to give each other racing room. But Alexander Wingmark having nerves of steel to get that one done. You do not normally do that, let alone our elite drivers here wouldn't normally do that. But Alexander Wingmark just simply saying, you know what, let's roll the dice. As Eduardo Royes, well, he's rolling his way up to the back of Darren Sharples. As they come down the back stretch, looking around the outside to the inside for will be the chase. And under braking there. The McLaren machine getting right ahead, and Darren Sharples not really having a response. I wanted to tuck back in, but I think right now the impetus for these drivers might be starting to lean more into strategy as Royes immediately tucks into the pit lane there. I wonder if that is going to be deemed an unsafe pit entry because he did cross the white thick line as he makes way. And of course, you do want to attack the pit lane entry as much as possible here at Bathurst, given the fact it is a short run into pits. It is a very short pit lane compared to most pit lanes in the world, so therefore it means the quicker you are in, the quicker you are out. It sounds obvious, but here it really is. Every second you can save in the pits at Bathurst is worth more than most circuits. Meanwhile, Max Wheeler tries to pick his way past Darren Sharples, and as he heads up the hill under the Pedders billboard, well, right now Wheeler's going to come through, and Sharples doesn't fight it too hard, to be fair, and they're not in the same class. But goodness me, what a whole sequence of events there, ladies and gentlemen. I think we need a quick look back at exactly how Alexander Wingmark made that incredible move that many would not dream to dare to do. Here we go then with a trip back in time. So this was Wingmark making his way up the hill. Now, James Conley had been going slowly. I think there had been a mistake for Conley or impact with the barrier. But Wingmark decided, right, let's go for it. Went around the inside at turn number 9 and in towards turn number 10 here. Well, he had to stay on that outside line. Conley, of course, brakes on early. They're probably both not used to battling side by side, but in towards skyline. They went too wide over the hill. Conley, in the end, on the inside of turn number 12. He backed off there. Conley could have gone a bit more aggressive, but Wingmark in the end decided if the door was going to be left open, he was never going to say no. What a move from Alexander Wingmark to take that place and, well, carry on his way. But meanwhile, we also did have a bit of difficulty just before that, as this was Max Wheeler passing Steve Hobbs. This was back on lap number 10, and in fact, it was into the pits there for Max Wheeler, as what Hobbs was going onwards. That might be a bit of a glitch of our timing system saying that an overtake was made there. We definitely saw this for what was in him making his way into the pit lane, as meanwhile, we make our way back to live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we come on back, well, we're almost at halfway distance. And, well, we may almost be halfway through this race, but we are not definitely halfway done with all the excitement and action that's to come today. And whilst your top three have definitely walked away at the very front, right now Tom Bland has not been able to get away from William Arneson. These two still fighting each other. Remember, of course, Arneson thought he got the move done and then made an error, which cost him dear. And so Bland was able to retake that fourth place. And now Arneson on pressure again, on the attack again. And, well, a bit of pressure building in front of Bland as he does find Littlemore right in front of him. And Brian Littlemore right now. Well, of course, the rules of blue flags dictate that you are not expected to just jump out the way. Oh, that's not going to work out at all. And, well, there, I think Littlemore just a little bit nervous. And, well, for Tom Bland, in the end, not knowing what Littlemore was doing, I think, from his perspective. And William Arneson picked up the pieces. And you can understand it from both drivers' perspectives there. If Littlemore's not used to that situation, he would have ducked to the inside there, hoping Bland would go around the outside. Meanwhile, I suspect Bland was thinking if Littlemore's going to let him go at Forest Elbow, he was going to go to the outside. But in the end, what happened essentially was it was the opposite of both drivers' understandings, and that's how Bland's lost the place to Arneson and picked up some front-end damage. And what we were going to say, it is the responsibility of the lead car or the car that's going to go down the lap to essentially just drive as consistently as possible or predictably as possible. And meanwhile, the lead lap car, the car that's coming up behind, is to then make the overtake. And, well, to be fair, we're not going to say Littlemore's done anything wrong. It'll be to the stewards if it does get reported. But definitely, I think some nerves just catching out both drivers. But understand, when you're driving over the mountain, this is not an easy circuit to respect blue flags at. And, well, when it goes wrong, thankfully it didn't go too wrong there, but it could have been far, far worse. But thankfully it was not. Kyle Roy, meanwhile, going up the inside of Robin Powney. So these two swap overall position again. Roy now back into 11th. And Powney, meanwhile, lets the place go. Powney has dropped back into third in the interclass behind Craig Hewlett, even more so. The gap to Hewlett now standing at 4 seconds, so therefore Hewlett's on a charge after Andrew Montaigne, but otherwise your top three of Inter has stayed the same effectively. Martin Kenyon's coming into the pit now as I look at my commentary booth window, and here he is, in fact, missing a rear wing, intriguingly, so I wonder where that's been lost on the circuit. If anybody has seen it, well, the Dixie Motorsports team would definitely appreciate it, because I think they're a bit short on budget at the moment, given some of the damage they've picked up to their cars over the course of recent racing seasons. But Kenyon right now will make his way onwards there, the Hard Rock Cafe driver, as he gets ready to make his way into his pit stall. But meanwhile, and James Connolly, Max Wheeler, they're all together. James Connolly, of course, looks to be okay now. I wonder perhaps whether he'd made a small mistake rather than had a brush with all, because the car does seem to be hooked up. And his lap times over the last 2 laps since being passed by Alexander Wingmark have been back on the pace we would expect from him. So, therefore, I think Connolly, if he's got a problem with the car, it's not visible, and he's doing very well to hide it at this point, to be fair to him, as Max Wheeler's definitely on his 6, trying to find a way past. Tom Wheeler and David Young behind. They're not too far adrift from each other. The battle of the Ford Mustang versus the BMW M4. And the Logistical Nightmare Racing Drive has been here for some time now in terms of chasing Tom Wheeler in that fight for 8th place. On the road, at least, to the Inters. But he's not been able to find an ingress at the moment. Of course, they are fighting effectively, as we understand it, for what is around 10th place in the class because of pit stop starting to play out. But for these two, they're enjoying the ride and enjoying the prospect of some valuable points. Coming over the rise very shortly. Well, meanwhile, we come to Nuno Vinagre, who has Henrik Strand behind him. And, well, keeping in mind, of course, Strand did have that trip to the pits right towards the start of the race. We believe it was for a quick repair of the car, although what damage he picked up, we weren't sure. But Vinagre, meanwhile, the privateer, well, a move goes up the inside in there, and it is going to be the Beta Frost Mustang who makes that place as the GRT machine, the Porsche, decides to let it go. And I think Vinagre at the moment, knowing that perhaps he's going to be battling with somebody who's not in his same level of pace, with what is Strand being a bit faster based on qualifying times and the form of the season. So what he's instead decided to do, as an intelligent driver perhaps would do, is simply say, right, I'll let him go and I will use him to pull me along for a couple of laps and give me some extra time. It's always a smart idea, to be fair. If you don't think you can hold the driver behind, particularly when you're only halfway through the race, but sometimes it's better just to let them take the place. Back up to the front of the field. And well, your fastest driver out there on the circuit at the moment is Andrea Miato, who is absolutely tearing away. And well, the Tata Perez tech driver here in the 202, definitely looking to try and make it another win today. And well, if he does so, well, it would be, I do believe, none other than his 3rd win of the season. That run of podiums would continue. That's his hope. But meanwhile, we've had Tom Bland towed to the pits, ladies and gentlemen. Bland's gone around. We briefly saw a clip there before the camera cut away. And well, I think Bland's had a spin over the mountain somewhere, but that will release William Arneson now in full plays. And Rhys Saunders and Harvey Wheeler still fighting each other here in the fight for 2nd overall. We'll get a replay of what's happened to Bland very shortly, but I suspect something's gone very wrong, and I wonder if it's towards McPhillamy Park. But as it's gone wrong for him, well, the batting towards the front of the field is definitely calming down, as James Connolly, meanwhile, well, he's not calming down here and chasing down Alexander Wingmark. And, well, understandably, a lot of drivers are refusing to pit at the moment, not because they're in protest, but for the simple reason they don't want to fall down behind other cars at this point. Track position being so vital, and therefore I think everyone's going to go with the strategy of go literally until the tank says no. And, well, you can fuel save by lifting and coasting behind another car, or even into the braking zones. And that could be an element which gains them about 1 to 2 seconds in the pits, if not longer. So fuel saving could be a treat. But meanwhile, James Connolly here for UKSimRacing Herbert. Well, he's definitely going to get a move on here in the number 46 car, dedicating his helmet, of course, and his door number to Valentino Rossi, the very established MotoGP driver, also now a GT World Challenge Europe racer, and taking 1 win in class over the course of his history. But Connolly in the end gets it wrong through 17, but manages to avoid brushing the wall there for his elbow. That losing momentum to the tune of 6/10 there to Wingmark. And an easy mistake to make, just carrying a bit too much speed through 17, and I suspect the rear of that Ferrari is starting to feel a little bit loose now, as tyre temperature definitely becoming a bigger and bigger factor. And in terms of your weather conditions here today, well, we do have a track temperature of only 22 degrees centigrade. It is a cool circuit, to be fair, uncharacteristically cool for this time of year, in the fact that we are in the transitional autumnal period now. And, well, as Connolly being passed there by Max Wheeler, here comes Darren Sharples as well, trying to pull on the pressure. It's not going to work out for him at all. And, well, Tom Wheeler trying to make a move here. The battle of the 2 Ford Mustangs behind. Wheeler wants this, understand, because he needs to get away from David Young, and he wants to place off a Connolly. But the problem is, Darren Sharples there, pinning him back. And, well, the pro driver just trying to pick his way past all the inters. This, of course, happens when you've got multiple driver classes. They're all allowed to fight for overall position, but nobody gains anything by beating a driver in another class other than bragging rights. But understandably, right now, they've both got their own agendas. For Sharples, he just wants to get through. But for all these inter drivers, they want to use him as a buffer or want him out the way. Well, heading onwards towards Griffin's Bend this time. It's all going to be in the draft this time. No changes. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the camera, that's Max Wheeler tucking up the inside there of, well, he's none other than Shane Cotton, making another place there. Cotton falling back now towards what is James Connolly, moving up into 5th place. And in fact, Shane Cotton's had a bit of a slow run on the previous lap. Now, I double-check his lap time, so it's a pretty poor start to this lap as well. So Bigmark has found his way on past Shane Cotton. And can we get a replay of that? So I think Shane Cotton's had something go wrong. Has he had a slowdown picked up? Well, we're about to find out, ladies and gentlemen, if we take a brief trip back in time, and not just for that, but also for what exactly happened to Tom Bland. We start with that, and here we go. This is what happened to Tom Bland on lap 15. So, making his way up towards McPhillamy Park. Oh, my goodness, that's a big hit with the wall there at turn number 9. And well, after that, well, the damage was done. Went wide at McPhillamy Park into the barrier and immediately, as quickly as he can, towed the car there. Parked it up, to be fair, in the right spot, but then got the car off the road, which is what he needed to do. We then had this happen only moments later to Shane Cotton versus Alexander Vingmark. And, well, where was Cotton? Here he was. Oh, he'd gone round at turn number 1 at Shane Cotton. He'd lost it. We only catch the tail end of it, and that explains why he'd lost out. So I was going to say, he was 5 seconds ahead of Vingmark before that. And, well, that explains what's happened to the Phoenix Racing driver. And not a mistake he wanted to make. It's a costly one, and it's cost him dear, as he's now lost a spot in the top 5 of the interclass, at least on the road. Well, back to live racing we go. And as we do come back, well, there's several drivers now making their way into the pit lane here. And first and foremost of that group is Vingmark, with Cotton behind him, and Wheeler as well. Meanwhile, Connolly and Sharples and Young all stay out. So the group decides to split up strategies. And we'll split the strategies there. Will the undercut or the overcut be the right one? Well, they're all going to think that they've got it right. Until they've all come out the pit lane, we won't know. So sit tight on that. We've got 26 minutes still left on the clock. Still many drivers out there. And we'll credit where it's due to all 38 of our runners today. We have lost a few along the way between Stoffco, Brooks, Hayes, Brotner and Bland. But otherwise, we've got 33 runners still. And everyone's still pushing on here, hoping that result can come their way no matter where they are. And to be fair, until you see that finish line at Bathurst, I mean, you say it every race. Anything can happen in motorsport, and it normally does. And it's not over until they see the flying finish flag. Well, right now, Andrea Miata, he will not be taking anything for granted. And a 201.512 there. His pace right now definitely still trend setting at the front of the field, although Reece Saunders is matching him. A 201.376. That's 2/10 faster almost. So Saunders is trying to come back, but Miata at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the team have told him over the pit wall to back off a little bit now, because he is coming up towards a pack of cars. But also the fact he might now be able to fuel save, and he can convert the gap he's created for himself on the road into a pit stop gap effectively, whereby he only spends, say, the standard pit time, but minus 2 seconds or so through some fuel saving. So for Miato, he's got to work this out, and if he can time it right, he can catch up to those cars at the right point in the circuit, as Hayden Miller and William Arneson, they're catching up to each other. Last time we saw these two battle hard, well, both of them in the end went out wide at what was turn 1 at Miami, if my memory serves me correctly, as a result of some contact that was triggered by the other member of the Beta Ross team. I hope I've got them in the right order there, or I'm sure I'm going to get a knock on the door afterwards from what will be Henrik V. Strand to say that was me, or was it Arneson? And well, I'm sure they'll let me know if not. But meanwhile, Hayden Miller here definitely trying to push on. The Corvette driver chasing down his Nordic counterpart, but the Scotsman right now knowing that it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass. And as he tries to get himself set up for said pass, meanwhile, Ross Young, who we haven't talked about for some time, he's catching up to Nick Parks. Now, in the interclass, speaking of Parks, he's in third at the moment, so that's got to mean we've had somebody pit, and you would be right. And it is Trey Hewlett, who pitted 4 laps ago. He is your 4th place runner in Inter, but right now, theoretically, we believe he is your 2nd place runner on strategy, albeit his target is to undercut his sister team machine of Andrew Montaigne. The Access Sport Z driver still out there, as Hewlett has decided to pit early to give himself some clear track, which he's definitely gained to himself with that coveted clear circuit, but now he's got to pay the price, which is get some incredible laps in and hope the tyres hold up, but he doesn't cut them apart. The mains man around there, the McLaren right now definitely looking comfortable. He's running it all the way towards, you know he's pushing, and we'll come through 6 inters and a brush with the wall there. Careful, Craig. I mean, we love to see you push, but not that hard. And we'll come through turns 8, 9 and 10 right now. Number 4 driver here is definitely leaving nothing up to chance, although he is pushing his luck, no doubt about that. But what exactly is happening at the front of that Pro? Well, here is Matthew Croft with a 5.7 second gap to Sean Connor. So it's all looking to go the way of the 113 driver right now. There's Connor, you can see him in the rear of the picture. Connor's not giving up, to be fair. The lap times between these two are interchangeable, such as the way they're pacing each other. Mercedes versus McLaren. And then Kyle Roy is still 7.5 seconds back. There he is with Henrik Rees Strand approaching him. And well, Strand looking ominous there in the Ford Mustang, the 6th place runner in the elite class. But of course, this is all right now coming more and more towards the pit stops as Robin Powen is in the rear of the picture, the second of your inter drivers. And then we do see Nuno Vinagre a little bit further back. Carry on. Meanwhile, there's plenty of fighting going on here between what is David Young and Tom Wheeler, with Shane Cotton in front. And well, these three inter-drives, they're definitely keeping us entertained. Although Alexander Vingmark has had a very poor run through McPhilly Park. He's lost a lot of time. And the Bathurst drive is actually falling backwards towards them very quickly. So I think he's made an error. He's making up for it coming out to Skyline and into the dipper. And it's going to give Cotton, Young and Wheeler a lot of confidence, because the gap was 3 seconds. It's suddenly been slashed by a whole second over that sequence. And Cotton right now, 9, he's got work to do to keep the guys behind him at bay, but also salivates at the prospect of making up another place today. Into the pits has come Ross Young off camera, so Captain Conte brief window, so he's decided to give up his track position, which was inside the top 5 of the pros, and as he emerges back out, we'll tell you where he's come out shortly. Right now, so transfixed to Cotton, who is trying to chase down Vingmark. Gap now 1.5 seconds. Vingmark did let the race leader Andrea Miato on past as well coming out of Forestdale, but that hasn't helped him too much. Well, he has had the draft of the Aston Martin, but obviously he's lost a lot of time in order to fall behind him in the first place. None of these drivers opting to come into the pit yet. Nobody wants to pull the pin on a pit stop, as we do see your second place driver there of Reece Saunders. He does come in, so Saunders times this very well, I think. In fact, he's opted to come in as far as the fuel tank could almost take him. I suspect he could get 2 or 3 more laps out of it, but seeing the number of inter drivers who will be putting a lap on shortly, he doesn't want to have to deal with that. Harvey Wheeler, meanwhile, stays out. So now, has Harvey Wheeler made the right call? His first driver he's going to come up behind will be a teammate. It is going to be Tom Wheeler. So in theory, they will be on the radio, and Tom will be told, look, Harvey is catching up to you, let him go when he gets close. But also, understandably, what they'll be hoping is that he can catch up to him down one of the straights and therefore pick up the toe, and that will be worth about 2 to 3 tenths on that lap alone. So there is a benefit here. Reece Saunders, meanwhile, where's he going to come out as that's a car turned? Hold up, who's that? Is that Eduardo Royce? Yes, it is. He gets himself turned around. Well done to him for doing so, timing that perfectly. Obviously, he would have had to tow to the pits immediately there, and the X-Systems what wide driver gets it turned around in the right direction this time, but he's definitely going in the wrong direction in terms of places. Nick Parks has come into the pits as well, but where is Reece Saunders? Here he is, he's come out and he's in clear air. He has got a gap of 2 seconds to Robin Powen in front of him, and he's got a 2-second gap to Nuno Vinagre. But this is exactly what the doctors ordered for the Altitude 3M eSports driver. And as he comes through, turn number 2 runs a little bit wide of apex there. Will we see a response from Harvey Wheeler on the next lap? Well, we'll have to wait to find out. As meanwhile, William Arneson and Hayden Miller, they may have swapped places, but right now the 222 is not breaking away, because Miller is all over the back and like a bad rash coming on down. We're looking from the rear of the Mercedes AMG Evo for Beta Frost, and we're 20 minutes to go. We're on lap number 20, and right now Arneson holding on here, but I think Hayden Miller, well, he may be involved. It's going to effectively be the battle for it will be the battle for 5th place, if my memory serves me correctly here in terms of how the strategies line up. And well, as they come down right now for Arneson, trying to keep it all together, and Miller pushing them onwards. But as they come down the straight, well, Miller here tucking to the inside. It's going to be the outside of the chase, but backs off immediately there, keeping Arneson guessing. So the Norwegian driver here playing it smart, but also there, Hayden Miller really playing the game with high-speed chess between the two of them. But he's going to peel into the pits, that's obvious, as he comes across there, not defecting to the outside line immediately, not going to keep Miller guessing at all, and not going to risk it. So Hayden Miller goes on, and Jeremy Arto comes in from the lead of the race, as Hayden Miller trims some grass there for good measure. And well, Harvey Wheeler goes on to lead a lap of the race. So as he makes way around here right now, well, of course, it was Tom Wheeler who led a lap of the race overall last week at VIR, and we managed to catch a glimpse of that, but Harvey Wheeler decides it's his turn to lead a lap of the race, and so he's going to do it on lap 21, with Hayden Miller and still out there, and Jeremy Arto, meanwhile, at the very end of the pit lane here, the 202 driver, definitely right now be grateful for a clear run. And well, where is Henrik Strand? Here he is, yet to pit. So Strand comes on through, and Miato has been fully serviced, and Miato will come out just behind him with Reece Saunders. Hold up a second, Reece Saunders has gained a lot of time, in fact, there on Miato. The gap to Andrea Miato has been cut down by 3 seconds. And I think Miato's had a slow pit stop, and I think he's done it by design, because the stop time itself was quicker. It was 15.66 to Miato versus 16.33 to Saunders. But I think Tartan Reztek told Miato, look, you've got such a gap, don't risk speed into the pit lane, because of course with the fact that our drivers love to charge into the pit lane at Bathurst, if you get it wrong going in the slalom, because it is multiple little kinks in the run into the pit entry, if you get it wrong through there and touch the grass, you can skid into the pit lane, and you'll cut the pit limiter line, you'll be speeding, and then suddenly it is going to be a drive-through penalty that's awarded to you after you've just made your pit stop. And that's going to add another, what will be about 18 to 20 seconds to your race, and Jeremy also not wanting to risk it. And well, in the end, by not taking the risk, Saunders has brought that gap down to 3 seconds. He has slashed it in half. And the altitude for him, esports driver right now, he is going for it. Now, in terms of what they'll do in the pits today, obviously they need to take on fuel, and they will most likely change 2 tyres whilst they're there. And in terms of the tyres that will get changed, given the fact that this circuit is anti-clockwise, it will be the front right and the rear right that will normally get changed, given the fact that there's going to be more wear on the right side tyres because they are the outside for most of the left-handers. Saunders there runs it so close to the wall on the exit Forest elbow. He is going for it. But meanwhile, other changes afoot. Sean Connor, after the pit stops, has taken the lead of the pro class. Matthew Croft has lost out in the pit stops, and well, where is Croft? There you can see him a bit further back by 2 seconds behind, albeit I think there's been a bit of a mistake for Matthew Croft. I don't think it's actually happened in the pit, and in fact, ladies and gentlemen, we can bring you up to speed with that story, because here's a replay to show you what happened to Matthew Croft and how Sean Connor has taken the lead of the pro race. So this was Matthew Croft making his way down towards Murray's Bend. Well, not the corner you normally see mistakes happen at, but in the end went on through, and the rear of the car just said no. And in the end, Sean Connor made his way on down. Croft had gone for the spin, and with the pirouette there, the McLaren driver saw Croft on the inside, and Sean Connor took the lead at that point, but it is still a 2-second gap between the two of them. And then Andrew Montine made his way on through there. You can see on the right to squeeze his way on past and take the place. So change the foot in the pro class, but will it stay that way for the remainder of the race? That's what we'll wait to see as we head back to your live racing. But as we come on back, well, there we go, back to the driver who leads the pro class right now, and knowing he's still got 16 minutes or so to go in order to make this a reality. But can he do so? That is going to be the question that confronts him. There was also an incident a bit earlier on with regards to Grant Miller having a spin, and he toes the bits as a result over the mountain. We haven't quite caught it. Matthew Croft is in the pit lane again. That's a drive-through penalty for Croft. So I think the spin and plus an off-track afterwards has added to his woes. Oh, and he's even gone to the white line on pit exit. Is that going to be an unsafe pit exit? If so, for Matthew Croft, that is going to be another black flag coming his way. And well, normally they say in a relationship it's all about red flags, but here today Matthew Croft may have found several black flags instead, and we're not happy ones at that, as your number 1 and 3 driver drops all the way down to 4th in the pro class. So suddenly what was looking to be a glued on chance at least a podium if not the win, now it's not even looking to be a podium, because Carl Roy is still chasing after Nathan Anstis. The gap between the two of them, that is not Anstis ahead of him, that is the Ferrari of, I believe, none other than what is Neville Harris just in front of him. Well, right now, Carl Roy here still trying to chase down none other than Nathan Anstis, who's 5 seconds clear. What's happened in the interclass meanwhile? Well, in Inter, it is Andrew Montine still leading, as that's the barrier there for Neville Harris, as he does let Roy go, but I think he's made a mistake at Maphilamy and gone out wide. In fact, he's going to toe to the pits there. That's a crunch to the wall, and unfortunate there for Harris, and we'll see if we can get a replay of that when we can, as Henrik Strand's coming into the pit lane out McConaughey booth window. But in Inter, it is still Andrew Montine who leads the class ahead of Craig Hewlett and Robin Paunier. But these two are very close together. And in fact, since the pit stop, Paunier 5 seconds quicker in the stop. I think that's fuel saving. Also, the fact a tyre or two hasn't been changed, whereas for Hewlett, they've changed an extra tyre. And also now, it's brought them within 9/10 of each other. So Hewlett is still second. However, he's got pressure on him now. And Andrew Montine, I think, is looking safe for the win, so long as he doesn't make a mistake of his own volition. Whereas for Hewlett, that second place is looking under threat. But with Strand pitting, it does complete our sequence of pit stops, with Hayden Miller having also pitted in this race, and therefore it does mean now the order has been reset. And Andrea Miato 3 seconds in the lead ahead of Rhys Saunders and Harvey Wheeler, but we will come to them on screen shortly as we see Hewlett and Paunier right now. The battle for second in the interclass isn't over yet, and well, I think Craig Hewlett will be looking at the back of Carl Roy's car, and whilst you understand that Roy is fighting for second in the pro class, given the gap to Anstis is 6.5 seconds, I think he'll be hoping that Roy might be a little bit obliging and let him on through if he catches up to him anymore. But right now, he can't afford to think about that, because we ride on board the front bump here of the Sim Coach 23. And we'll Paunier here very close, as we do hear the backdraft of that McLaren 720S Evo with bi-turbo V8. But right now, the 6.3 litre V8 monstrosity from Germany of Paunier's Mercedes absolutely naturally aspirating its way to loftier ambitions as they come in towards the cutting. But of course, this is the territory over the mountain where the McLaren will be the quicker car. It is down the straights where this Mercedes, meanwhile, will growl its way after the car in front. And well, I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Panier right now, he's got his eyes set on the target. He needs this second place in order to keep Andrew Montine within arm's reach in the championship. Third place, it won't be too bad for him, but it does give Montine just a little bit more breathing room with only another 3 rounds to go after this one. And with rounds running out and points becoming precious, you don't want to lose out if you can help it. Whenever your rival in the championship wins the race, there's one place you need to be, and it is second, no less than that. But right now, if Craig Hewlett wants to keep his championship alive, he needs that second place as well, and therefore both these drivers will find themselves at an impasse. But who exactly will come to the pass at the end? That is what 12.5 minutes is going to decide. As they make the way down the back straight, we come briefly to James Conley, who finds himself still glued to the back of Darren Sharples. The split in the end of this group, by the way, has seen Alexander Vingmark get to the front of it ahead of Sharples, with Conley, Cotton and Young then 7th to 9th in the interclass all together. So that was a brush with the wall there for James Conley, as it was for Shane Cotton. So both drivers getting very close to the exit wall coming out to turn number 5 into 6, still pushing each other. And Cotton here looking very quick as we ride on board. Brush with the wall again for James Conley. That Ferrari right now, I want to tell you one thing, if he's ever wanted to leave his signature on the circuit, leaving your paint around the circuit is one way to do it, but also in the end they're able to keep it going. It shows you it is a completely flush brush with the wall and not alternatively an angled one, which would damage the suspension. But Cotton right now backing off there down through the dipper, not quite as confident to attack. And meanwhile David Young behind him, who you can see here in that BMW M4. And that BMW always looking evil with the G82 kidney grille. And we're coming down the back straight here right now. Machine that's been on the grid. It's crazy to think that BMW M4 has been on the grid now for what has been a grand total as this year 4 years of racing. I still remember the knee-jerk reaction when everyone saw it unveiled onto the world, replacing the M6 of those many years ago. But right now it's definitely a staple here today. But right now can Cotton staple his way ahead of Conley? Thinks about it under braking in towards the chase. No way through. Still back as Conley runs a little bit deep, with the Ferrari driver knowing that he has got track position, and that will keep him comfortably ahead. But meanwhile, we look back to the front of the field. Reece Saunders, 3.23 seconds is the gap to Miato, but the problem that he's got growing behind is Harvey Wheeler. Now, he did open up quite a gap in the pit stops to Wheeler, into the best part of 2.5 seconds, but Harvey Wheeler right now is lapping on average 3 tenths a lap quicker. Now, part of it, you would say, particularly now that he's within 1.5 seconds of Saunders' car, part of it is the draft. But Harvey Wheeler in that Aston Martin is looking very quick. And the Aston Martin, in fact, is looking generally quick here today. So therefore, it might be the right combination to have a car that is relatively good on the straights, but also quite comfortable in the corners by comparison. As we've had a bit of change further down, Nuno Vinagres had a bit of a moment with the barrier, I think, at Forest Elbow. And that is going to be side by side between him and Ryan Littlemore, who is a lap down and lets him go. Norrie definitely has fallen behind Matthew Croft as they all head onwards. And well, meanwhile, we had a big moment for Alexander Vingmark. He's dropped a long way down. In fact, he's dropped down to 24th place. He was running in 6th in the interclass, and suddenly his fortunes have turned for the worst. As Petro Antonio Pasquarello, meanwhile, has made his way on our way through the skyline, getting ahead of Martin Kenyon, who lets him go. And Kenyon right now, we come back to him with 10 minutes to go. He's running happily in 5th in the interclass right now. And Nick Park's a bit too far away from him, but in return, I think he'll be very happy to be 7 seconds clear of James Conley. Can he keep it together and bring on home another top 5? However, that is going to be on his mind. But what's also on our mind is what exactly has happened to none other and Alexander Vingmark. And well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we can give you a quick replay of that. So this was the Beta Frost driver in the number 2, making his way in towards turn number 1. Not under pressure as such here, but went into the corner, went wide of apex, and went to the gravel. In the end, avoided the barrier there, styled it out, and was he rejoined there, or rejoining and losing a lot of momentum, and James Conley was able to sneak on through, as was Shane Cotton in the end, or was he? Not quite, and almost able to get on past. It was a drag race. In fact, he would get past in the end, I think, in towards the braking zone. And Vingmark in the end making sure that David Young could not find his way back through by comparison. So, David Young being held back, Alexander Vingmark making his way forward as we head back to your live racing. And well, 9 minutes left on the clock here. Time is ticking on down, but Time waits for no man, as they say, and Nick Parks right now does not want to wait too much longer for what would be his best result of the season, a 4th place here in the Interclass of the 35 driver. This would be a real sign of how far he's come since the start of the season. He has grown in that Mustang, and right now, well, I don't think the element of a podium is possible unless one of his rivals was to retire from the race. Not saying it will happen, to be fair, but that's the only way I think that's going to happen, or they have the mother of all mistakes, which surely would be a retirement of Bathurst, to be fair, but right now Parks definitely keeping that momentum going forward. But from him, well, we look back up to the very front. Miato still leading, 3.1 seconds. There's Saunders in the rear of the picture. Then there is Wheeler. Harvey Wheeler now a second behind Saunders. He is getting closer little by little. Saunders is being made to turn up the wick. And Reese definitely does respond normally when this happens. But, of course, there is turning things up and then there's going beyond 100%. And right now, I think whatever Wheeler is giving, Saunders is going to have to try and get back. But it's going to be about 110% at this point. And that's where the mistakes can happen. But where you see the finest racing at Bathurst is when they're driving beyond their limits, when they're absolutely frying themselves from wall to wall to wall. And, well, it is Wheeler right now making his way onwards from Skyline, as meanwhile it's gone very wrong for Tom Wheeler. Hold up, who's that parked up? That's Darren Sharples, who I think's had a bit of a brush with the wall, and Sharples has come to a stop. But is that just him letting drivers go? No, there's damage to the car there. He's been involved in something. He's been able to carry on. The front left of the car from the driver's perspective, front right from that camera angle, is all crunched in around the wheel. And, well, it's gone very wrong for the 177 driver, and that's going to relegate him down. But he's still trying to hold on here to get some points today and help resuscitate the form of the old Dizzy Cars team, with both teams needing an injection of points, no doubt about it. Something's definitely gone wrong for the pair of them. Can we get a quick look back as to what exactly has happened? The answer is yes, and we start off with the instant for none other than, I believe, Darren Sharples. In fact, it is Tom Wheeler we get the replay of first. So this was Wheeler coming down the mountain, and as he came from the Skyline in towards the dipper, lost it of his own volition. Oh, that's not nice at all. A big knock to the barrier, and the car completely in bits. And this had happened to Darren Sharples only moments before. So this was Sharples in towards McPhillamy Park. So just before Wheeler got it wrong and lost the rear of the car, and a knock to the barrier there, and going completely sideways and holding the brakes as long as he could. And in the end, I think then getting the car turned back around once the road had cleared. So that explains his story as we go back to your live racing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we return to Darren Sharples. We've got a car now that is definitely well and truly repaired. Well, meanwhile, we repair our focus to Andrea Miato in the very front of the field. And on lap 27, Miato still 1.5 seconds ahead of Reece Saunders. It is getting tasty. Now, understandably, Miato has had to clear a car that he's put a lap down. That's Eduardo Roy's. That may have cost him a little bit of time. Roy's still carrying on despite the damage in his Axis Simsport machine. Well done to him for carrying on. And, well, these drivers all very close together. Now, who will catch up to whom first? Will Saunders catch up to Beato before Wheeler catches up to him? And that's the question, because as Roy steps aside there, he doesn't want any part to play in this as much as he can help it. Now, Harvey Wheeler takes it nice and easy coming down through the dipper. And, well, something might tell me that perhaps Saunders is going to be the one to catch Miato first at the moment, because Wheeler right now is definitely going to have to contend with Roy's, although he'll gain the draft here coming out of turn number 18, Al Forest elbow. That's going to be helpful for him. Wheeler will know that gap is a little bit bigger than it was previously. Further down the order, we are keeping an eager eye on our top 3 overall. We do still have the question of who's going to finish in 6th through to 9th in the Interclass and where they're going to finish, because James Connie is at the head of the group. At the back of the group is the man you're looking at, David Young, and between them is Shane Cotton and Alexander Wingmark. Wingmark, of course, the man who was comfortably running in 6th place in the Interclass until he had that big moment earlier on coming out to turn number 1. And with Bates Frost driver right now, 9, there's still work to be done as he looks the inside there. And with Shane Cotton not feeling too much pressure, at least at this time. In 2nd through to 3rd of the Interclass, meanwhile, Craig Hewlett is still ahead of Robin Pownier. Gap is holding around 8 to 9 tenths at the moment, but you can definitely see the trend, which is that McLaren has all the speed on the mountain, whereas Pownier has got all the speed on the straights, and that's how they're oscillating back and forth. And, well, in front of them by only 1.2 seconds is your 3rd place pro driver, Kyle Roy, who isn't really catching on Nathan Anstis too quickly at the moment, as we understand it. In fact, hold the phone on that one, because that gap between Anstis and Roy has been cut from 6.5 seconds. It's down to 2.5 seconds. Could Roy be coming back here versus Anstis in the late stages? Anstis' last lap was 0.5 of a second slower than Roy. He comes across the line this time. It is a 2:03.334. Roy, a 2:02.662. We might have a fight here for second place in Pro right at the end. If so, it's going to come down to how many laps we see right at the finish, ladies and gentlemen, because Anstis right now, he has been reeled in very quickly by Roy, who you can see running wide there out of the opening corner. That's going to be an off track there for Kyle Roy, but if he's got them, he's going to use them now and see how close he can get towards the very end. And well, this is going to be VIR over again, albeit not with rainy conditions today, or a drive-through penalty for either driver. But I think Kyle Roy at this point is thinking to himself, I'm not going to miss out by a lap this time around. I'm going to go for it. Now, how much pace has he still got left in the Miracle Group M Academy Corvette? Because, of course, those tyres will definitely be starting to ache a little bit, even if you put some fresh ones on in the pits. As these drivers coming around, well, I wouldn't be surprised if Nathan Anstis only changed one tyre, so that's a lot of oversteer there coming out of 4 for Roy. He is pushing it right now. The rear of that car is sliding on the round. You'd expect from a mid-engine rear-wheel drive Corvette, but when the rear is really cutting loose and he's more diagonal than straight coming out the corners, you know that he is absolutely turning it up. But unfortunately, he finds a little bit of traffic in front of him. That is the car of Darren Sharples that he'll be looking for a way through, and Sharples in the end, well, Sharples is going to step aside and take the escape road there. He'll let them all go, but as he does, stays the outside, and in the end, the battle for second and into squeeze them through. Well done to all for managing that one, particularly Sharples. And well, all these drivers right now unhindered, although Roy has lost about 0.3 of a second to Anstis in that sequence, although Anstis has had a bit of a nightmare run coming up Forest Elbow, so those 0.3 of sun have been credited back to Roy as quick as that. But Roy's going to be dragging Hewlett and Powney along with him now, so both of them will be eager to try and bring Roy into the fight, particularly if your name is Craig Hewlett. You want the pro driver to act as your buffer to Robin Powney, so I think Roy's going to be a bit worried at the moment that Craig Hewlett's going to be looking at him with point symbols in his eyes, thinking that Roy could be my reason for success to hold on to second. Powney right now is going to get the move on here, and the sim coach team will be telling him on the pit wall, Robin, you got to go, because right now I think Craig Hewlett's going to be trying to make a move on Roy shortly, and well, you don't want to have to do that as well. Can he get any closer? Meanwhile, at the front of the field, 2 minutes left to go. They went on to lap 29 with what has been a whole 2 minutes and 10 seconds left. So we are going to get a 30th lap in, we do believe. But Andrea Miato right now under increasing pressure, and there's traffic in front of him. That's Alexander Wingmark right now for Miato. This is not good for the Tata Red Stick drivers. He has to back off through Skyline. Well, coming on down here through the corners, and we can see Reece Saunders immediately getting close, but into that braking zone they come, and all these drivers right now, it's a long queue of cars here. This is not good news for Andrea Miato. He's got 9th through to 6th in the interclass in front of him. Up the inside goes Reece Saunders. He dives on in, and Saunders just simply says, yes, thank you, I'll take that immediately. Miato's being conservative, and meanwhile, you can see he's flashing the headlights straight away. I don't think he believes it. I think right now, I don't even believe it, ladies and gentlemen. Where on earth did that come from for Reece Saunders? That was from downtown, and we would say that was sent first class, but that was 2 first class stamps on that one. But here comes Miato backing him immediately. Well, the fight for the elite win is on right now, and Miato says, well, I can do it too. He's going to go for it, and then there's contact. It turns Saunders on the round, and well, Miato in the end, I think, wanted to come back, but that one may not have worked out. It's going to send Saunders all the way back, and will Saunders part up on the grass there. He's going to be fuming at that one after making what's an absolute golden egg of a move. Anderson goes on around the outside of him, and Miato takes the lead back with 1 more lap to go. The white flag waves, but right now I wonder if he's going to look back after that lap later on today and think to himself, well, do I really need to go for it like that when I still had another lap to go? But in the heat of the moment, we'll understand who the red mist descends, and right now, Andrea Miato, as that's gone round in the rear of the picture of that, it's David Young who's gone for a spin, and Hayden Miller takes the base of action. So does William Anderson back there and Harvey Wheeler. But Miato right now, I think he's going to be looking back this one afterwards and means himself how far he came back, and Saunders, understandably, might have a word with him after the race. But as the clock does tick on down, well, it's 0 very shortly, and right now we are on to our final lap, lap number 30, and well, can Harvey Wheeler find a way now to steal away the win that he's been chasing all the way through this race? Indeed, he has been a very quick driver, and he's on the back of Andrea Miato to 4 attempts here, and all it requires at this point is one last move. And Miato, understandably, once again finds himself surrounded by intercars in front of to him. And the problem is going to be here, is it going to be literally the same lap all over again where he catches them at the worst possible time? Well, here we go, and Wingmark there leaves the door open, but it's not close enough for Miato. Miato is going to be caught up here as they come down the hill. We run on board with Harvey Wheeler at this point, who's got to judge this perfectly, coming down through the dipper, and right now Wheeler's got to have the best exit he can through Forest Elba unless he goes for the send. But will Miato go defensive to cover it off? Not quite. He does hold the middle of the road, so therefore he's worried that Wheeler will go for something. But now out of the corner, who's had the better exit? It is Wheeler. He's had a much stronger exit, half a tenth already gained, and in the drag race now, well, Miato will have the saving grace of that Porsche run. He wants Wingmark out the way as quickly as he possibly can. Here they go. It's going to be narrow. It's going to be one wide initially, but there's getting enough room for two as well in this final lap, and coming down the hill in towards the chase. Miato right now, where does he put the car? He puts it to the inside. Wheeler looks around the outside here. Elbows out between the two Aston Martin drivers. Miato goes defensive. Wheeler cuts back in. He's right on the rear bumper. It's going to go to Murray's Bend. Miato's got to defend on the inside now. How can Wheeler get it around the outside? Can he get it at this point? And the checker flags awaits coming out the final corner. Miato's going to make it as wide as humanly possible. And in the end, Andrea Miato is going to take the win on the road, just ahead of Harvey Wheeler by only 1400s. It'll be Hayden Miller who comes up through to finish on the podium there at the expense of Rhys Saunders. And William Arneson will take fourth place just behind. It will then be Rhys Saunders in fifth place ahead of Henrik Riestrand by the best part of 12 seconds. As he brings on home his race there for Beta Frost. And then we will see 5 seconds behind him in 7th place, a first win of the season for Sean Cotter for Cotter Bros. It finally happens for him, and right now he'll be absolutely ecstatic about that one. Got it done when it went wrong for his rivals. Andrew Montaigne will bring on home the win in the Interclass there, making it another win and another podium for the Access Sport Z driver, one of his best. Nathan Anstis will hold on to 9th overall, and with its 2nd place in Pro, just ahead of Cole Roy as he closes the gap. Craig Hewlett does outpace Robin Powney to the run-up spot in the Interclass in the end, ahead of Powney who takes 12th, and it'll be Matthew Croft who in the end has to settle for 4th, knowing that early mistake cost him dear and cost him the win. And then we will see Nuno Vinagre take 14th place, and a solid drive for him ahead of Steve Hobbs who rounds off the top 15. Max Wheeler comes on home very shortly to bring on home 8th in Elite, coming all the way up the field after a slow start in 16th overall. Ross Young will then be a little bit further back there, as we do see Rob Windsor finishing a lap down there in what was the 1.72. He takes 9th in the Pro Class, but Ross Young in the end will bring on home 6th in the Pro Class. Some decent points for him today, even if it hasn't been the best of results. And Nick Parks, well, how about this for the privateer, ladies and gentlemen? It's not a podium for him, but it's a season best. It's a 4th place, and he does match his rival Shane Connon out on a best result of the season, taking on home 18th place as well. Well done to the 35 Ford Mustang driver. And Martin Kenyon, well, he's got a bit of a journey to go, but let's see him make his journey complete. And it's going to be another top 5 today for the DXT Motorsports driver, who in the end, he wasn't able to keep up with the top 4 in the Interclass, but he was able to steer clear of the rest of them, and therefore continues his campaign for 3rd place in the championship very happily as he comes across the line. James Connolly, in the end, will finish just behind, taking home 6th place in the Interclass, 20th on the road. And then we will have Shane Cotton very shortly coming through to be one of the last lead lap finishers here, as the car, I think, is stumbling on fuel for Phoenix Racing, but he takes a great result at that 7th place in class as Alexander Wingmark makes his way into the pit lane there, and Wingmark will lose that result as Shane Cotton just squeezes across the line with Petro Antonio Pasquarello coming on home just ahead in there for Tartan Restec with the fuel in the car. But goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what a race. And as we do see Sean Cotter right now enjoying his cool-down lap and coming on home once again. Well, they're not only allowed one cool-down lap, but I think we'll make an exception for the American driver as he's going to celebrate this one in style. He'll be absolutely ecstatic about that, and he's earned it the right way today. No doubt about it. A faultless drive. He was chasing Matthew Croft, but in the end, he didn't need to chase him that hard when Croft had that big moment. And Sean Cotter there giving us some donuts, celebrating right now. Although the team, of course, will have to add a new set of rear tyres to the budget. But understanding the 155 driver out couldn't care about the budget. All he cares about the fact is he's got that first win on the board. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as he enjoys his time at the very top, let's take a look at those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. And as we can see, after an incredible 60 minutes of racing here today at the Mount Panorama circuit, as our clock does disappear out the way, well, round number 7 saw Andrea Miato take the win. We will get a replay of what happened between himself and Rhys Saunders shortly after this rundown of results there. So a bit of a contentious moment between the two drivers, but the Tata Redtech driver, at least on the road, taking the win ahead of Freewheeler Racing by Phoenix's Harvey Wheeler, who was only a 10th behind at the finish. And if the traffic had worked out slightly differently, could he have perhaps taken his first win of the season? Well, we'll never quite know, but we will know though is, he came incredibly close. Hayden Miller took third place there for Phoenix Racing, threw everything at it, but it didn't quite work out in the end. And, well, for him today, definitely a bit of luck coming his way and to be on that podium, but otherwise it would have been a full place just ahead of William Arneson, the Bathurst driver who did take fourth and benefiting from the demise of Rhys Saunders, who took fifth after that incredible dive into Forest Elbow, which completely scared, I think, everybody, none more so than Andrea Miato. Well, the Ford Mustang driver for Altitude Forever Esports 9, it wasn't a win today, but he definitely will have won the hearts of a few drivers out there. Henry Strand took sixth place for Beta Frost, a frustrating day in the office for him, but he did recover well to that sixth place in the class ahead of Sean Connor, who took seventh place overall, but for him, most importantly, his first pro win of the season, and the Connor Pros driver there absolutely doing it in style. Andrew Montine, well, in the end, he was pressured, but the inter-win did come to him with 8th place overall for Axis Sport Z, and he was a further 7 seconds ahead of Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Manish. The runner-up in the pro class didn't have the third place finisher too far behind him. Carl Roy was only 8 tenths behind at the finish line for Miracle Group and Academy, and he rounded off the top 10 overall. Behind his Corvette, it was Craig Hewlett, best of the rest there, but most importantly, second in the interclass, and the Axis Sport wide driver managing to hold off Robin Powney all the way to the end, with the Simcoach driver coming on strong at the start of the second stint, but as he got closer to the McLaren in front of him, they found equilibrium. So he completed the interpodium, and behind our pro and interpodium finishers, we did have Matthew Croft there, the leader of the pro class for so long, but on lap number 19, it was the decisive lap where a small mistake was so costly for the Axis Sport Z driver, and Sonny 13th was the best he could achieve. Nuno Vinagre took 14th there in a race for the privateer today that was all about making his way back up the order after a difficult start, and Steve Hobbs there completed a top 15 for Simcoach. It was a further 9 seconds back to Max Wheeler for three-wheeler racing by Phoenix, who did his best to carve his way through the field, and Ross Young took 17th place for DXT Motorsports for 15 seconds behind. Nick Parks, 18th, his best result overall, and a 4th place in the interclass, ahead of Martin Kenyon, and there was James Connolly who completed your top 20 for UKSimRacing Herbert. Outside that top 20, let's not dwell on it for too long, so we need to come to the class positions for the points. It was Petro Antonio Pasquarello, who in the end had a difficult day today in the office, and the Tartan ResTech driver not having things work out for him at all, but still there's more rounds to come for him, and the same for Shane Cotton in some respects, although the Phoenix Racing driver did in the end enjoy what was one of his best performances in terms of position, but something tells me he was hoping to try and take that 6th place off of James Connolly towards the very close. It was a lap down to Alexander Wingmark for Beta Frost, as it was for Eduardo Royes, and the theme continued for David Young, Darren Sharples, Rob Windsor, Tom Wheeler, and Justin Noel, with being 2 laps down there to Shane Connor and Ryan Littlemore, with Littlemore's debut in the end being a bit of a rough one, but well done to him for seeing the finish line of the race. That's what we love to see. And it was retirements to Neville Harris, Grant Miller, Tom Bland, Casper Rotner, Daniel Pays, Ashley Brooks, and your first retiree of the race, of course, none other than Jakob Stofko. But now coming to the individual finishing positions, because these are the ones that pay the points, and we do see in the elite class firstly. It was Andrea Miato taking the win there by a 10th for Tartan ResTech over Harvey Wheeler for three-wheeler racing by Phoenix, but only 1.3 tenths separating the two at the finish line, one of our closest finishes so far this season. Hayden Miller taking the third place spot on the podium there for Phoenix Racing. No, it's a good injection of points, but he needs even more. And William Arneson for Beta Frost there. A 4th place today, definitely not the result he expected, but given everything, he'll be glad that he was able to make his way back up the field, particularly after such a difficult start. Rhys Saunders took 5th there for Altitude Forever Esports, and well, for the Ford Mustang driver, definitely not the win he was expecting, nor the podium finish he was hoping for, but still a 5th place there. It keeps him in the hunt for the championship to a degree, but knowing that right now things are definitely not working out as planned, it's time for plan B. Hendrik Strand took in 6th place there, the Beta Frost driver. Indeed, the Beta Frost team today really having to manage damage limitation, with Nuno Vinagre in 7th place there ahead of Max Wheeler, and the three-wheeler racing by Phoenix driver almost a whole minute ahead, or in fact just over a minute ahead of Petro Antonio Pasquarello, who in the end for Tartan ResTech brought home the 9th place spot, the last of the lead lap finishers. Justin Noel was a lap down, round off the top 10 in the elite class, and it was retirements for Tom Bland, Casper Brotner, and Jakob Stofko. But outside of the elite class, we come to the pro class, and here we can see, in our pros, it was Sean Connor, your winner today for Connor Bros, his first win of the season, 14 seconds ahead of Nathan Anstis, who in the end could only keep Culver at bay to the tune of 8 tenths, but it means he gained some ground in the championship, and suddenly it's just looking that little bit closer. But Sean Connor as well gains ground on his 2 rivals with that win, And right now, do we have a three-way fight for the championship crown brewing with 3 rounds to go? Well, your gut feeling says yes, and mine does so as well. Matthew Croft, 4th there for Axis SimSport Z. 9 today was a throwaway of a win. And right now, for the 113 driver, 3 more rounds remain. He needs perfection at this point onwards if he wants to be in the title fight. Steve Hobbs, 5th there for Sim Coach. A solid day today and another solid haul of points for him and the team. Head of Ross Young there, 6th for DXT Motorsports, not quite able to match up to the pace of earlier rounds, but still there's more to come. Eduardo Ruiz was the first driver of the Pro Class to finish a lap down there in 7th for the Axis SimSport Y team, and the McLaren definitely looked bruised and beaten, but not broken. And it was also a lap down to Darren Sharples and Rob Windsor. And behind the UK SimRacing Minish driver, it was then the retirement of Ashley Brooks there for Axis SimSport Z. Finally coming to the Interclass, and here we got to see what was another win for Andrew Montine, the Axis SimSport Z driver, picking up that win by almost 9 seconds over Craig Hewlett, who in the end had to focus more on holding on to second after staying ahead of Robin Powner even after the pit stops. The Sim Coach driver huffed and puffed, but the Mercedes didn't quite have enough in the end and had to settle for 3rd. It means it will tighten up at the very top of the standings, albeit Montine will continue to lead, and it will be Powner who falls away from him a little bit in 2nd, but Craig Hewlett now will definitely start to cement his chase for that 3rd place. Nick Parks took 4th there, and a great result for him, his best result of the season, ahead of Martin Kenyon, who with another 5th place keeps himself well within touch of the championship leaders, and the DXT Motorsports driver there having a bit of a lonely race. And James Conley was 6th, with the UK SimRacing Herbert driver in the end enjoying a brilliant fight for that 6th place ahead of Shane Cotton, Alexander Vingmar and David Young, with the Logistical Nightmare Racing driver and Vingmar both being a lap down as classified. It was also a lap down for Tom Wheeler, 3 relay racing by Phoenix, not having the happiest day in the office, but 10th either way, and Shane Connor was best the rest there in 11th place for Connor Bros, 2 laps down. It was also 2 laps down to debutant of Ryan Littlemore, and then we did see retirements for Neville Harris, Grant Miller and Daniel Pays. So that's a rundown of the provisional results, ladies and gentlemen, subject to stewards' inquiries, and I suspect there may be a couple. And well, just before we get ready to wrap up, we do take a look back at the Saunders-Miato moment on lap number 29. And well, ladies and gentlemen, this is definitely going to go for the highlight reel as we do take a look back. And well, this was as the drivers made their way down in towards what was Forest Elba. And Miato here playing it very conservatively. And Saunders decided to go all in. And Miato at this point will completely caught out as we then jump on board with your Aston Martin driver, and well, definitely had the flash of the headlights on there, feeling as though Saunders might have gained that place unfairly, albeit the door was wide open, so all fair in love war, as they say, but as he powered his way down towards the chase. Well, for Miato, he was going to try and take it back, as Saunders in the end outran him initially, but into that braking zone, well, from very far back came Miato, looked up the inside, and, well, his argument would be he's been turned into on the apex. Saunders would argue there's no overlap. And, well, we've only, of course, had a couple of camera angles of this. The stewards have more if it gets reported. But for Andrea Miato, in that contentious moment, the lead came back to him. But unfortunately, of course, not the way anybody wanted it to go, I suspect. And, well, for Andrea Miato, that's the way it has gone. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, we do now make our way to wrap it up for today. And what a day it has been of racing here at Bathurst. And a huge, huge thank you to you all for tuning in today. And if you have enjoyed all the racing action, the splendour that we have seen for what is round number 7 of the UK SimRacing GT3 Championship, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to get on the grid at the SimRacing International community, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you do join the official Discord. And you can do so very easily. Use the link at the bottom of the screen as displayed there. And if you are to do so, well, you can get on the grid for any one of our ongoing and upcoming series, of which, of course, we do have Season 11 of the Thursday evening GT3 Championship currently ongoing, 2 splits, 120 drivers, and we have just announced the sign-ups are open for Season 12. We are changing things up a little bit. We do have our Masters and Superstars versions of that series. But if you're more of a weekend racer and you prefer to be on the grid on a Sunday evening, well, of course, the UK SimRacing Community Sunday GT3 Championship would be a perfect fit for you. You've been tuning into that today, and well, we do have Season 18 on the cards at some point, I suspect, and indeed, do join the Discord if you want to know more about that. But if you're more of a GT racer who wants to go with something a bit old school, perhaps you're a big fan of the GTEs, well, we've got you covered as well. Because on Friday evenings, we do have currently our inaugural season of the GTE Championship, which is coming to a close with only 2 rounds to go. But indeed, I'm sure we're going to be seeing a second season of that at some point, if not in the immediate future. And that's on Fridays. And also we do have, for a more casual audience, are free to join Practice League. If you're new to the format of league racing or just want somewhere to have a bit of fun on an evening or two, we do have the Practice League, which runs on Tuesday evenings, Wednesday evenings, and Saturday afternoons. And so whatever day it is, whatever time it is, there's never been a more perfect time for you to join the grid here at SimRacing International. And whether you're an esports professional all the way through to a rookie, we'd be very happy to have you join us. Also, we'd like to take this moment to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include Carmate, More Than Technology, and also the GP2 Group. And we must, as always, give a special shout out to the Motorsport UK Esports Division team for recognising us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community. We're very grateful for that recognition, and long may it continue throughout 2026 and onwards. But ladies and gentlemen, VIR was full of drama due to the rain. Bathurst has just been full of excitement and drama due to it being Bathurst. But where are we next time out then for round number 8? Well, the story will continue as we make our way to the foothills of the Eiffel Mountains in Germany. No, it will not be the Nordschleife, but we will be seeing our drivers take on the Nürburgring Grosser Preisstrecke. And there, at the highly technical circuit, who exactly is going to prove themselves to be the master of their craft when it comes to the corner and come away victorious? In the elite class, the championship remains in the hands of Andrea Miato, but he knows the pressure is building from many of his rivals, including Reece Saunders and also Hayden Miller. But also, Beta Frost need to find a way to bounce back, as both William Arneson and none other than Henrik Riestrand both had difficult days in the office today. Meanwhile, in the pro class, well, it is still Carl Roy who leads, but Nathan Anstis is gradually gobbling away at the lead that Roy has carved for himself. And meanwhile, Sean Connor with a first win. Can he make it 2 back-to-back and bring himself right into the thick of it? And in the interclass, here's Andrew Montine with another win, who expands his lead, but Robin Powney and Craig Hewlett are never too far behind, and don't rule out Martin Kenyon. If he finds a podium, he could be right within it as well. So all that and more is to come next time out in round number 8, and whilst the racing will occur on Sunday the 1st of March 2026, we invite you to come join us as if it were live on Monday the 2nd of March. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been at SimRacing International. You've been tuning in to the UK SimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship Season 17, and I've been your host, Paul Walsh. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.